Get ready to experience the pulse of the outdoor community as we dive into the stories of people's journeys into the outdoor world. Hello, just some quick updates on this podcast and things that have gone on in this past week. So in the past week, 2 episodes have been released on other podcasts where I was a guest. One is called Hiking Through Life, where I talk about my experiences with climbing and skiing and things like that. And then the other one is the 20 Till Takeoff podcast, where I talk about fears and how traveling and my outdoor sports have affected that. Outside of that, I am releasing this episode a day late because I was in the mountains all weekend and I was not able to get the full episode completed and edited before Monday. So we will be back to the normal schedule next week. Thank you, and let's jump into this interview. Welcome to the Outdoor Pulse. I am Mitch Dean, your host, and today we have on Mike Whitacre. He's an avid outdoorsman and a graduate from Ohio State University. So how's it going, Mike?
It's going good, man. Had a long,
Awesome.
hard day of work, and I'm just excited to be chilling on the podcast. You know, this is going to be a new thing for me. One of my first podcasts I've ever been on, so it's going to be great. I'm excited.
Cool. So we're going to jump right into it, and we're just going to start off with kind of how you got into the outdoors and what kind of your first steps into it were and how that kind of looked, and just kind of go from there.
All right. Well, so the outdoors for me, I got into it at a very, very young age. I have a pretty outdoorsy family. When I was really, really young, I think the first outdoor activity that I ever did before I knew I was doing it was like going camping with my dad. We used to live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, way back in the day. And before that, when I was born in Columbus. Okay, my dad was graduate school at Ohio State. My mom was working at Bank One downtown Columbus, and I was born here. And we lived in Pataskala, and there was a big swath of woods behind the house. But when I was I'd say about 1.5, 2 is when or 1 year old was when we moved out to Colorado. Lived there for the first few years of my existence, and the dad got really big into rock climbing and camping and backpacking when we lived out in Colorado. So some of my first memories are playing it we had a creek in our backyard and a big rock that was in our front yard, like a freaking big boulder that we called Mike's Peak because Pikes Peak was just down the road from Colorado Springs. And so that was where we grew up. So I've photos of me climbing at age 3 or something, like just some super easy, more or less dad pulling me from the top up thing and me slowly moving my hands thinking I'm actually climbing. And I'm like, oh, I'm so good. But I was 3 years old. And then I think we have a family video, one of those old VHS tapes of my mom recording us, and some lady next to her was standing at the bottom, and she said, does his mother know he's doing that? And my mom was like, yes, I do. And it's great. I love this. And that was, I think, probably one of my first outdoor memories was going to the Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs and then playing in a creek in the backyard and then climbing on this little boulder that we had. And that was the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
Very quickly transitioned into fishing and hunting soon after. Hunting was a little later, but the whole of my family are fishermen. On both sides, my grandfather, my dad's side, and my grandfather, my mom's side, both very big fishermen. And so I grew up doing that. And I still to this day am really into it. It's ridiculous how much money, time, and effort I put into fish. I even that's my job also is I work as a fisheries technician for MBI. And then I float around to different agencies doing fish work as a technician, but then looking for some full-time fisheries ecologist position somewhere. So that's the current existence.
So what fishing did you start off getting into out in, because it was out in Colorado, was it
It
fly
was in
fishing or
Colorado.
was it fly fishing or was it more
Really,
bass
really
fishing?
young. So I was doing like bobber fishing for like in like trout ponds and creeks, and the I have a picture. I would like bucket hat wearing, like little tiny tackle box shirt. Okay, with my pap, with my grandfather, my dad's side, and just holding like this little tiny rainbow trout that I caught out of this little stalker pond on like a piece of corn or like a worm or something, and like the biggest like shit eating grin on my face of any child that I've ever seen. So that was probably the first time I was really like, oh my god, this is so cool. Fast forward a little bit. So my sister was born in Colorado, and then we moved to Ohio, back to Ohio, moved to like the Cleveland area, between Cleveland and Akron.
Yeah.
And the outdoors continued for me there because we had a pond at the end of our neighborhood. And I then learned that there were fish in this pond, and I could walk there with a fishing pole, and then like just no one knew I was gone. Like I'd just get home after school, get off the bus, put my backpack in the garage, walk to the other side of the garage, take my one fishing pole I had at the time, and just chill out, like leave, deuce out, not tell my parents I was going anywhere. I would get in so much trouble because I was gone to go fishing like all the time. One day I think I even woke up and like before school and just went there and like missed the school bus because I was fishing, and my mom tanned my hide or something. I think I don't remember per se, but I got in a lot of trouble. And that continued throughout my life, getting in trouble for doing outdoor things I probably should have been doing school things during that time.
Oh well.
That was a constant factor. But caught my first like big bass when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and at the time it was like as long as my arm. Today that probably would have been like an 18-inch fish, which is like around like 3.5, 4 pounds, an 18-incher, depending on like how fat it is, but
Yeah.
largemouth bass. I don't know how much you know about fishing or not, but that was like what really like hooked me, as a good pun. But it was bass fishing then became like my like what I did, because I moved away from Colorado, so we didn't really go rock climbing a ton when I moved like to Ohio initially, and so like then the next like let's see, how old am I? Like 7.
Yeah.
The next 8 years was like very fishing heavy with some like hunting trips thrown in there. Me and dad started hunting because dad, my mom's side, my grandfather was a like world champion duck caller. Okay. I don't know if he ever entered a tournament, but he was good enough to be like that was his thing, was duck hunting and like going crappie fishing. That was his two things. And so very young age memories of going out to like the duck blind and sitting there and freezing my butt off, but like super enjoying myself with like a little BB gun, and everybody else has like full out like 12 gauge shotguns. And I'm just sitting there thinking like maybe I can get one. If something flies over, just lands like 10 feet from where I'm sitting, I might be able to get one. But that was my first real introduction to hunting. And then from there, like there wasn't really too much YouTube or like online media when I was young. Like you had like TV, like hunting TV that you could watch. And I was like, oh my gosh, people go deer hunting. And dad had a pair of antlers from a buck that he shot like forever ago. And he gave those to me when I was 10, 11, 12, sometime in that range.
Yeah.
And so I played with these freaking antlers like all the time, thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go shoot a deer or something at some point. And so I think I was 13 or 14, I went on my first ever deer hunt, which was like I think we went up to western Wisconsin in Eau Claire. My mom's cousin, Mike Smith, he has like 150 acres up there of a farm that we went, and I sat in the rain in the tree stand with my dad. And first off, like I had no fear of heights when I was like real little. Okay, none at all. No fear of heights whatsoever. The first time we went, right.
Growing up Colorado Springs and having your dad drag you up rocks at
exactly. Like
age.
I didn't know what fear of heights was. I had no concept of fear of heights until until I went deer hunting. It was like, I think it was maybe the second time we went out for the season. And like the first season we just went out because we were going. It was like early doe, and we went out to try to shoot one. Didn't see anything at all. And then the reason we only had it for doe season was because we were going to South Dakota for another trip. I'm going to talk about all the places I've been in a little bit, but this is just like a chronologic timeline of things that have like developed who I was as an outdoorsman. So we were the next year, I don't know where, if you are following or not. The next year was, I was like, I've done a bunch of research and I was ready to go. We even went out and bought me my own rifle and like everything, and I shot it and it hurt my shoulder, and I was like so excited that it was such a big gun and everything. And so we went the next year, and Dad sent me up the tree stand first, and I was like, all right, sure, just climb this ladder, get up to the top. You're only up there like 17 feet.
Yeah.
But when I got to the top, I had my rifle with me. Like I had it on a string. I pulled it up. All the hunter safety and tree stand safety and everything I learned. I was following the rules, right? Pulled it up, put it next to me, and then Dad was going to follow me up. But then Dad decided it would be funny to take the tree stand ladder and just shake the crap out of it while I was up there, to just be like, hey, you're not going to fall. It's not going to come down. I actually thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. And so that then instilled a fear of heights into me when I was like 13 or 14 years old. Okay. And that stuck with me. And ladders, I still don't like ladders. I never will again like ladders ever. Okay. Because of this experience. But I kind of got like a fear of heights in me from that kind of experience, which took me until like, I guess mid to late high school to kind of get over to where I was starting to get back into climbing again, because I realized that, oh my gosh, there's a climbing gym like 3 minutes from my house. And why haven't I been climbing for like most of high school? And so I started going to the gym and like kind of slowly got over my fear of heights. And then college, Ohio State, rock gym every other day.
Yeah.
No problem, you know? So that was, and I still don't like ladders. I really hate ladders because it's okay. When you're rock climbing, you know this. When you're rock climbing, the rock is solid. There's no way that rock's, I mean, to a point, if it's like loose sandstone and flaky, you could bust stuff off. But if it's rock, it's solid. It's not moving. What you're climbing is not moving at all.
You're on a rope.
Not moving.
You're on a rope.
You're on a rope.
You're safe. So
yeah.
Only
but
thing
ladders,
that can happen
dude,
is decking.
Yeah, you could deck. You could blow a hole, miss a hole, miss a dyno, deck a little bit, but or flip over and smack the wall, like I did when we went to the Red that one time. But ladders are not secure. They're not attached to anything unless, like, I'm talking about like leaning ladders. If you're talking like the little scissor ladders that open up, those are fine because you're not super high. You're not like the forces are good, but like the leaning ladders are what mess with me. And everybody who listens to this podcast be like, man, this kid's a wimp. Ladders are fine. Ladders are easy. Whatever, guys. That's just the thing.
There's a ladder clamp that you can get for ladders that you clip to a gutter, and it just makes it more sturdy. But you have to clip it on still. So
yeah, you still have to be at the top of the ladder to clip it on anyway. It's not like you can like rappel from a distance and like clip the thing, then get to the bottom, then climb the ladder. Like if you're like, I don't know.
Just afraid that you're going to pull a Christmas Vacation, Clark Griswold.
I love that movie.
Fall down and
anyway. Where the hell was I before I went on this ladder tangent? Let's see.
Well, you're kind of going through how you got into hunting, which you had a family that's super into the outdoors, which is awesome for getting into outdoor things when a lot of people that I've talked to, they don't get into it until they hit college and they meet people that are already doing it. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm sure you've experienced it. And I have too. I've gotten some friends into skiing. I've gotten some friends into climbing. And the thing about a lot of these sports and activities is unless you know someone actively in it, really kind of a little bit intimidating and hard to get into. So I think it's awesome being on the side where you are able to bring people on and show them that it's really not too crazy.
For you, were you really set up by your folks, or did you just develop this thing and like a longing to try it?
A little bit of a mix. So climbing was not family, but my dad is he skis a lot, and he got me into skiing when I was like 5, and camping and things like that, hiking and all those things. And
I'm actually wearing Breckenridge sweatshirt. This is where that's how same kind of deal. My dad got me into skiing the same way on a leash.
And then my dad taught me how right away which he's like at such a young age, all you have to do is just stand behind him, let him hold the pole. So he'd hold the pole over my head, and I'd grab on, and then he'd steer me, and that taught me how to turn and taught me how to do everything. So
Pizza, French fry.
He got me over the pizza pretty quickly, just because being able to hold that, because he would hold the poles for the skis like right in front of me. So I'd be holding on like this, and I couldn't pizza because his skis were on the outside of my skis. So it started off, but he got me to, which is a genius way of teaching a little kid how to ski, because like you're able to do that, and it helps with getting past because that French fry, you don't know
if you're going straight,
and you don't know how to stop. So yeah, stopping. I remember. I kind of remember because I was like 5 or 6, but I remember stopping was one of the first things he taught me, and then just turning. As long as you can turn and stop, you can go down pretty much any
hill.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's how, I mean, that was kind of my initial kind of getting into it when I was, but outside of that, I didn't really get into anything big outdoors until college. Like I went to college and was introduced to climbing. Met the mountaineers, got into climbing, got into everything else, got more into skiing, skied out west for the first time, and just fell in love with the mountains. And the mountains are, once you're there once, it's like you always kind of want to get back. So at least that was mine, thus moving out here back in May. So
right.
Yeah. So
congratulations on being in Colorado, dude.
Feels great.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
So happy to be out here. It's nice being so close to all the activities in the mountains, and feels like a vacation, honestly. I'm like, am I just on a forever vacation now, or is this like real? So it's definitely, if don't want too many people moving here, but no, it's okay. I mean,
it's pretty populated already,
but I mean, you can't, it's shared. I mean, we can all share the mountains. It's beautiful. So
man, we can get into public land stuff too during this podcast. This is gonna be a great time. I'm so excited for all the rabbit holes we're gonna dive into.
Oh yeah.
So going back to being like thankful about having an outdoor family.
Yeah.
It truly is like something special to be able to like introduce somebody and see them like a light click on in their head. Like, oh, this is something so cool and so magical that I've never been exposed to. Like, that's my favorite part about fishing, hunting, climbing, and like any sort of like outdoor recreation that I am like fairly versed in, or at least to a point. Like, I'm not a professional in anything.
Enough that you can get someone started in it. I mean, it doesn't take much to get to the point where you can drag someone to a rock gym with you and get them on a wall for the first time.
Right. And like pressure your roommate into doing the freaking like the 5'9" that he is like shaking, holding onto something, like, come on, dude, it's only like 7 more feet. You can grab that hold. Come on, stand up. Come on, use your legs. Like, it's so fun to just like.
And then when they say they can't, and then it's like, let go, and they're like, I can't let go. It's like, well,
you have 2 choices.
It's either go up and then let go, or let go now and come down now. So
exactly. No, I love it. Let's see. That's so the hunting tangent. Anyway, as far as like, I'll finish out hunting, and then I'll go back into a couple of the other things.
Yeah, sounds
so good. Deer hunting really took off for me when I got into bow hunting. I've always been into archery. That's another thing that as soon as we moved to Ohio, Dad got me a little tiny bow that I then shot the house with, and like sent an arrow like straight up one time, like in the backyard. And we don't live in a big area. Like, we don't have a lot of land at all. So like it landed in like some neighbor's property somewhere. I never found that arrow. Like, I got in trouble for that when I was real young, and I had my stuff taken away from me because I was making dumb decisions because I was a child. But I mean, I feel like every kid makes dumb decisions, especially when you give them like a semi weapon. But be safe, kids. I really got into archery pretty heavy when I was in like early high school. I got my first, or it was 2012. I got my first like legitimate compound bow that was not a hand-me-down. Like I used to use my uncle's like 1987 Panther Martin compound that shot like 65 pounds, and I put an arrow through a deer with that bow and never found the deer. And that's like a whole thing. Like I don't know how much you know about hunting or anything, or if you've
Yeah.
had anybody on that's talked about hunting.
My uncle
Like
is
that is probably like
my uncle's been hunting since he was in high school. So, and he has a bunch
okay.
of he's got a bunch of big bucks, and his son actually just got his first deer last season. So,
Oh
and
really?
his son's
That's awesome.
in like I think it was 8th grade, 7th grade. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, first deer
Nice.
for his son, and it was a big
Are
moment
they
for
in
him.
Ohio?
Yes, yes,
Nice.
down in
Yeah.
Cincinnati. They
The
go out to my uncle's farm out in Indiana. He has a bunch of
mhm.
acreage that they'll go out to. I don't know
That's
if it
always
was there though.
nice.
I know that he has a couple different places that he's gone to and friends, and
Okay.
he's a salesman, so
Hmm.
he has a bunch of connections all over the place.
That's really convenient. Yeah. Yeah, so it was early high school. I got my first bow that was like legitimately new, my first bow, and I still have it and I still use it. I've shot a couple deer with it. It still works. I will upgrade, but I'm going to keep that thing for a long time because I like it. But the first year I got that bow, I think it was 2014. No, it was 2013 when I got it. It was a 2012 bow, so like a year old. And then in 2014, I think I shot my first it was 2013. I was a junior in high school. I shot my first buck with a bow, and I was instantly hooked. I was like, this is the coolest thing that I can do in the woods in fall, hunting wise, and like because
Yeah,
it's hard to describe anything that happens. I mean, you have family that hunts, so that I'm sure they've like tried to explain like
yeah.
what goes on. But
I
it
will
like
never
you
know
sit
until I
there,
actually do it, and I know that,
try
and
it. Yeah,
it's
it's
something that but I always do so many other things. That's been one of those things that's like I want to get into it, but it's
finding
finding the
time to do it.
time
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
so
It's not, and especially archery, like you have to be like on your game, like practicing all the time to just be ethical to where like,
yeah,
like you can make like a good shot on something. And so like I'll talk about this a little later too. I have a, I have a clock. I have a biological clock where my brain shifts into whatever outdoor phase it wants to. Okay. And as the seasons roll, okay, I shift into these phases of like which outdoor activity I'm focusing on. And my parents hate it. I kind of hate it, but I kind of love it. Like
yeah.
there's
Just go
literally
from
like a
thing to
biological
thing. Yeah,
shift. Yeah, craziness. And I'll give you the month by month play by play. It's crazy. Like right now I'm heavy into deer prep because and this started like mid August is when like or
yeah,
even late July is when I like started thinking about it because fishing was starting to kind of suck, and then the summer transition in fishing was like meh, and then transition to that like you start to see deer walking around with antlers a little bit because they're
yeah,
growing their stuff,
yep.
and then it hits you like a ton of bricks as soon as that first cold snap hits where it's like it goes from like 85 during the day to like 65, and you're like, oh boy,
And
it's time.
we just had a
You got
bigger
to get
one.
ready.
We just went from 100
Oh
to
yeah, you guys
below
just got
freezing.
snow, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we went from 100 degrees and
Oh,
within
the
24
West.
hours dropped down below freezing. So about a 70-degree shift in a 24-hour period. So it was a little
Typical,
wild.
typical Colorado.
I thought the Midwest shifted a lot and you could go through all, and I'm like, oh no, this takes the cake.
Yeah, you'll get every season in a day out west, and you'll get every season in a week in the Midwest.
Yeah,
But no, that's crazy. The the biological clock that happens to me. We'll go through it right now. So we'll start at the
yeah,
beginning of the year in January. All right, month one. Okay, if it's snowy, which sometimes it's not in Ohio. Okay, there's a very good chance that
yeah,
I'll go ski a couple times. Okay, because I grew up skiing. I like to ski. It's not my like favorite winter activity to do, but it's definitely up there because I have a bunch of friends who like to snowboard and ski, and where like back home is where my parents' house is. They like I think 15 minutes from Boston Mills and Brandywine up there. So like as a kid growing up, that was where we went to on the weekends when it was snowing. So that's definitely a thing that happens.
Yeah.
After I get that itch out of the way, not that it's an out of the way thing. I know you love to ski. Okay. but
Skiing's it's one of
like
those that's definitely my big winter sport, and
mhm.
it's nice to I'm looking forward to the first season, full season out here. So
Yeah, yeah. And are you going to like what's your favorite place to ski out there?
that I've been to so far, I've been to
Mhm.
Copper. It's been my
Copper
favorite.
Mountain.
Copper was my favorite, partially because we got 17 inches dumped on us in like one day. So
That's
kind of
fantastic.
kind of helps a little bit and made it really nice. But the other years we went to Aspen, and Aspen's cool
Mhm.
too. But I've not really been anywhere outside of that. And then when I
Have
came
you
out here with my dad and sisters, I went to Steamboat. But this
mhm.
winter I have A Basin and Loveland passes, so I'll be
You
going to
should
those.
try Breck
I'm
at
planning
some
on
point.
trying a couple different ones. I've heard Breck and Vale since they're
Yeah,
right past it, and
yeah.
yeah,
That's where when we lived in Colorado, Breckenridge was where we went skiing. And that's like I guess I haven't been there since I have not skied there since I was like 3. So I don't
man,
really have a good like I was 21 years ago, which is
need
crazy to say.
need to get out here again for
Oh,
sure.
I know, I know. I'm trying to plan out west trips. I have an Idaho elk hunt next year with my buddy Jason. I have that we're trying to like lock down. It was gonna be this fall because I was gonna have a full time job that got canceled because of COVID. I
Yeah.
which sucked. And then I was like, we were slated to go out there, but then also COVID, like a bunch of crap. But I feel like, I mean, that everybody's situation is the same with stuff getting ruined and things going wrong, all the
Yeah.
crap. Anyway, not going to include that too much more in the podcast. It's
Weird,
whatever.
weird couple months for everybody in the outdoors and how it's
Yeah.
affected and how it's affecting because we're hearing how it's affecting like the ski season down in um where is it Australia, because Australia has some resorts that are owned by is it Vail or Aspen? I forget which pass they're on,
In
but
Australia, there's
yes,
skiing in Australia. Dude, I
yes,
never knew that. Really?
yeah, yeah, and they're kind of sounding off with like how because they're owned by the Vail system, and the
Mm-hmm.
system that they're using down there is the system that's going to be in place up here, and it's
Okay.
you have to like reserve a like if you know your day that you're going, you have to reserve your spot, and it's they
So
limit
there's
the
like
number of
limited number
it's
of people on the mountain.
yeah, and it's
That's
based off
fair.
percentage. So if the mountain's 50% open, it's 50% capacity. So it's kind of been a little bit of a mess down there from what I've heard. So we'll see how everything clears up and how that works out exactly this
Mm-hmm.
winter. But I know that A Basin's not going to be having a reservation system. They're going to limit the number of passes that they put out. But
Got you.
other than that, they're planning on being fully operational, and which is kind of nice to know in
Mm-hmm.
advance. So, but obviously that can all change. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what happens.
Talking about the availability of a resource. This is like a huge thing with COVID and like the outdoors and stuff that's gone on. I'm sorry. Can
Yeah,
I or can I not swear? Because I almost dropped
yeah,
this.
yeah. Go,
Okay,
go.
cool.
It doesn't
Shit.
need to be
Anyway,
completely clean.
the amount of fishing pressure that happened due to the pandemic, due to people not working, and like the amount of people going out and buying fishing licenses and going fishing there was actually a huge spike this year and I don't know if you are aware of this, but like recruitment of people that partake in those activities is constantly from at least I think the 60s. It's been on a decline
Yeah,
of like people every year not buying a hunting license, not buying a fishing license, and like a majority of license owners and holders for right now are people that are in their like 60s, 70s that are those old timers that have just been buying one since they've been around in the 60s. So as soon as that population of in this case baby boomers, you know, are gone, then we're going to have a lot less people buying tags and licenses, which is going to actually equate to a lot less funding for our outdoor recreation.
yeah.
Because hunters and
Also,
fishermen,
population control problems with that, and
yeah, with wildlife,
overpopulation and
mm-hmm,
all that stuff. So yeah,
mm-hmm, which for at least in the Midwest, like whitetail deer are pretty well overpopulated to a point. I mean, we've got bag limits in each of the counties in Ohio that are different based on deer population. So, like, for example, like the highly human population counties, so Franklin County, Summit County, Erie, like the one that Toledo's in, I don't know the name of that county, the one that Cincinnati's in, all of those have like a 4 deer per person limit, which is crazy to think that like there's that many deer that like we need to make sure that everybody gets their amount. So that way there's like a controlled herd. But so you think about Colorado, and I know a little bit about Colorado for as far as like an elk standpoint, okay, which are huge ungulate animals that walk around that taste super good. Okay, Colorado has the largest elk population of any of the western states, at 300,000 head of elk, which is not really a ton when you think about it, like when you compare that to numbers of like whitetail. And so the good thing about like,
isn't it I forget so you got the whitetail, and then out here you got the mule deer.
Mule deer. Yes. There's also whitetail. Okay, so like the deer species in the United States, you have whitetail deer, you have the Coues deer, which is a subspecies of the whitetail. You have mule deer, which can then be separated into like the Rocky Mountain variety and then the desert variety. And then you have elk, which are all the same species, but then there's like little different like subsects. There's like Roosevelt elk. There's people out west are going to give me crap, but like I don't know all the different varieties. There's Roosevelt. There's like ones that are on the West Coast. There's ones that are in the Rockies. There's ones that are in the South, like around like Arizona, New Mexico, and they all have like their own name. Sort of the same way that like there's like Midwestern whitetail. There's Southeast, Northeast, Western. There's a bunch of different varieties, and they're all the same species, but like they get different colloquial names. And there's like slams where people can go out and shoot them and whatever.
And anyway, before we get a little bit further, how old were you when you bagged your first deer?
First deer, 15 years old, and it was a little like not a spike. It was a little fork-horned buck. He had like two little dudes up like this, and I shot him. I was by myself in a little tripod, like elevated stand at my mom's cousin's place, and like I had missed there was a doe that walked out in front of me at like 40 yards that I completely missed somehow. I was using a rifle with a scope on it. Really, it's not that hard. You just point and shoot. But I was just shaking so freaking bad that I completely shot like
your
under
first
it.
Deer. So yeah, the nerves you got your nerves way out.
Shaking like a leaf. It's crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous how much adrenaline you get when because it's life and death, like you're dealing with this whole thing. All these emotions are coming out of nowhere. You're like, I didn't think I was going to feel like this as soon as I pulled the trigger, and I missed. And I was like, oh my God, like, thank God, but crap. Like I missed, like it was a clean miss, so that's great, but I missed, so I don't get the meat. And the thing is, like, I'm definitely I'm in it for the meat, and if it's a big buck with big antlers, like, awesome. But I really do enjoy eating venison. Like that's
meat tastes
probably
better.
It's so good.
That's tough. Yeah, deer meat's amazing.
It's so good. It's healthy. It's delicious. It's locally grown, organic, sustainable.
I need to have some elk out here at some point. I do know that. I've been
you
told
need
that
to find you need to find a friend that goes elk hunting. And my buddy Jason, who I've brought up now 3 times in the podcast. I love you, buddy. He just shot his first cow elk in Idaho, and so if I make it out there before he eats it all, which will be hard because it was like 350 pounds of meat off that thing. I might try some. Yeah. So, let's see, where the heck was I? Talking about the pressure that has been put on by like everybody that's a non-fisherman, non-hunter, non-outdoorsman that's going out into the woods. It's been crazy. Like all of my local spots, like around Cleveland and Akron and Columbus that I've fished forever and like never really see anybody out there ever, have been absolutely hammered by Joe Schmo, regular schmucks that come out and like, I'm going to go fishing today and like burn my spot. But like at the same time, I'm happy that people are getting outside.
Yeah.
But there's like the double-edged sort of like, I had this to myself.
Yeah.
I was catching all these fish. Now I need to share.
Find a new place. And it forces further into the wilderness, further away
into
from
the
people.
Deep. Yeah. It's good and bad, but it's more so good as far as like the recreation and the use of the resource and people like buying the licenses and like providing funding. Like that's what I was going to go into earlier is like, hunters and fishermen, we're kind of snobby about this deal, but we provide like a ton of resource and access to our resources that we have based on like the amount of funding that we put into it, because there's like all those different bills that were placed.
Colorado just came out with a law that is limiting people from, because their public lands got slammed, same as a bunch of other ones because of COVID.
Right.
And it's the wildlife preserves. Unless you have a license for fishing or hunting, you're not allowed to go in there, else you will get a fine at this point here in Colorado.
And there were people that were pissed. There were people from like, I think PETA or a couple, not to diss on any organizations. Yeah, I'm not going to share beliefs or anything, but they were kind of pissed off by the fact that they had to actually go buy a hunting or fishing license because they don't support those kind of activities. Like, why do I need to have this thing to go on my public land? But the thing is, like, if you want to use the resource, it's kind of like a pay to play, you know, like hunters and fishermen are providing for this for like the past like 70, 80 years. And that's the reason we have all these like natural resources that are available for the public. It's simple funding. That's why we have so much pull in Congress and other places, because we spend so much money and time there. Like every time people go out and spend money on firearms or spend money on fishing equipment, a small percentage of that is taxed and then sent into like the conservation fund, which is then used for all those things. And I know a ton about this. It's like, it's all over a ton of the podcasts that I like to listen to. And so I like to be educated on these kind of topics, but this is like totally not about like what my hunting and fishing lifestyle is. Hello, dog. No. Dude, you have some great photos on your Instagram and Facebook about you and your dog going out and like adventuring. It's great. I love to see it pop up on my feed.
Dog. She's just kind of like, why are you being so annoying today? You usually aren't this way. Yeah, I know. Yeah, she's 10 months old, so
super cute.
But no, that Colorado literally just passed that law to limit people from getting into the wilderness areas without buying it. If you have a tag or if you have a hunting or fishing license, then you can. But I mean, Colorado has so many open space places, and they're public. The state of Colorado's parks never closed during COVID, which was great because I got out here and I was still able to get out into the mountains. The only thing that was closed was the national park. So national park was closed, which all national parks were closed.
How far away from the national park are you?
About an hour and a half from Estes Park. And then, the park's pretty big. So, I mean, it's like you can drive a half hour, 45 minutes and from end to end of it. So it depends on where you want to go inside the park from there. But from where I'm at, I'm half an hour from Boulder and about an hour and a half from Estes Park. So, which is Estes Park, if anybody knows where that is. It's beautiful area, but it's kind of like, it's the touristy area, like you drive in and it's the, what would be a good place so if you're from the East, probably kind of like, it's a little Gatlinburg. I'd say Gatlinburg's a lot more so commercialized. And
if you're talking about ease of access, dude, Cuyahoga Valley National Park is like the most traversed national park, and it's like literally a minute. I could take I can't throw a baseball in there. It's a little too far for that, but I can like definitely hit a golf ball really, 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 really hard and maybe make it into the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It's only half mile. Maybe
from where you're at.
I definitely cannot hit. I definitely cannot hit a golf ball that far, but it's really close. Is what I'm trying to say. It's just over the hill and down into the valley. And you say like to like all my buddies, it's like going into the valley, drop down, go to the Lizard, go get some wings down to the Lizard, right by the Cuyahoga River. And so that's another thing. Like growing up, bringing it full circle, fishing. Okay, I lived on that river. Okay, and so I've got like huge ties to it, and then like. For work, like career-wise, I've been like, so I had a couple different internships with Ohio EPA. Highly recommend. If anybody's listening from Ohio that wants to do any sort of environmental internship, I highly recommend Ohio EPA. Great group of people that I worked with for the ecological assessment unit. And like one of our survey areas was the Cuyahoga River for both years that I was doing fish. And so like I've spent not only a lot of time recreationally there, but also professionally doing like biological monitoring and sampling. Actually, because it's 2020, the Cuyahoga River burned again. We had a I don't know if you saw, I shared it on Facebook.
I did not know that.
Yeah, no, there was a tanker truck in Cuyahoga Falls that there was an accident on the highway, and I think it was a gas tank truck like exploded and leaked fuel on the highway, which then melted the highway on the bridge, and then gas got into the river, which was on fire, and so the river burned again in 2020. Congratulations, 2020, for winning the worst year of all time. Yay!
Back to Cuyahoga catching on fire.
Yeah, exactly. But
at least this time it wasn't as bad as just like the water being just so
right.
bad.
This was a moment in time, very small amount of pollution that got in. The emergency response teams from Ohio EPA was there. There was a bunch of other Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District was called in to do stuff.
I wonder if they called in anybody from Clean Harbors too. I worked for Clean Harbors, and they're one of the largest environmental companies I know. So that's who I was working for 2 years. And our field service guys are the ones that clean up spills and things like that all the time.
And emergency response team.
Yeah, and we have a pretty big crew up in Cleveland. Actually, Cleveland's one of our bigger crews in Ohio, bigger than
Makes
the Ohio
sense.
crew, I think so. But I wonder if they were called in for that too. But
if you had a crew in Cleveland area, you for sure had them. They were like
they had all hands on deck.
I applied for a Ohio EPA emergency response position, and I got number 2, which is like the best loser. The guy who got it over me, he had like 10 years of experience, and so I'm not like knocking on him at all. But I was really excited to get this, so I did a bunch of research and everything for the process. And what I learned the most is that when stuff goes wrong, okay, you keep your cool, but you call in as much help as possible. You call in everybody. Everybody gets called, and so. Like, I bet you anybody that was in around the area, especially because the Cuyahoga is such like a river that everybody knows about, you know, like there were probably response teams from like the Twinsburg OEPA office, from central office, from people in the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. Like a ton of people got called in. And thankfully, like I was on the Cuyahoga today actually for work, and we were doing a sampling in Kent, which is upstream, but people were out using the river. Everything was good. Everything was great. You know, and it was nice to see that my river wasn't on fire there, because I knew it wouldn't be, obviously, but I was just happy to get back to my roots on that river. So when
it comes to, we'll start diving in a little bit more into your fishing and how that's kind of grew and kind of the growth from there, since that's one of your biggest things. And obviously you've been fishing your whole life. You had that pond right down the street.
Right.
I had a pond, my aunt's and uncle's place that I'd always go to. So I feel that when I was growing up, and now my dad lives right next to it. And when I was back in Cincinnati, you can walk 100 yards from my dad's place and fish for bass and, you know, just small little bluegill and all that kind of stuff there.
Sunfish.
There's some pretty big catfish that my uncle has put in there from the Ohio River, actually.
Heck yeah.
He's caught a couple big catfish, and they're laying in there, and there's some big boys. I'd say they're at least there's one in there that's over 25 pounds probably. So some not too big, but obviously there's much bigger catfish. But
that's a big catfish.
Yes.
No, like trust me.
Yes.
If is it like do you know if it's a flathead or not?
It's a flathead. It's a big.
Yeah.
The size of my torso.
Dude, those things.
Yeah.
When we shock flatheads for work, they'll come up. And they're unlike any other fish. Channel catfish will freak out. They'll like come up and like slap the top of the water and just do all this crap. And like all the other fish. We have a couple of those in there. The flathead. We have a couple channels and a couple flatheads in the same lake. So that's cool. But what flatheads do when they get like, so for electrofishing, for anybody that doesn't know, you take electricity, put it through the water, and that causes the fish to swim toward the positive current of the electricity from the boat or whatever equipment you're using, and they then get stunned. You net them, put them in a live well, and then go back and then count them and sort them for doing like a biological survey. And then that, coupled with a macroinvertebrate survey and a water chemistry survey, allows people to make an overall analysis of a river or a system to then provide information about human health, water quality issues, anything like that. That's like the really short spiel on what I do for work. Okay. But when flathead catfish get zapped, okay, when we stun them, they come up and they just open their mouth real wide and they just say like, like that's what they do. They don't roll, they don't slap around, so they're really kind of hard to find sometimes because they're just giant brown dark
Blobs.
creatures, blobs that come up, and it's just all you see is just big open mouth, and it's really cool because you freak out. You're like, oh my god, big flathead. And so I'm sure, like, can you like throw like a photo up in the deal or not?
I can post, during this part. I'll have to remember
Okay.
that.
Just like write it down.
Like a flathead.
Yeah, I'll send you one that I shocked, and you can post it. Like you just
Yeah.
put it like right here or whatever.
Yeah.
Ding. Anyway,
that'll be something I can also play around with, learning more about.
Yeah.
'Cause I need to get better with my video editing anyway. So.
No, but so like that's just something super cool that they do. They're just a cool catfish. They're definitely the coolest catfish that are big. There's a bunch of like little catfish that are also pretty cool. There's these things called mad toms, and they have like a wicked amount of venom in their spines, and they're really like kind of cool for like intolerant species. They don't handle pollution very well, so it's always fun to find them. Anyway, we're going to fish. That's work fish. My fun recreational fishing is what we're here to talk about, kind of.
Yeah.
But
that kind of led to what you're working in something that you actually have fun with in the first place. So
the fact that I've had these opportunities to do to do this for work, like I don't regret it at all. I'm always like super excited, super jacked up to go to work in the morning. Like it does not matter. Like I used to landscape. I started out flipping burgers, like I worked at McDonald's as a cashier flipping burgers. And then I worked at like Dick's Sporting Goods. I sold fishing equipment, it was my next job. I worked at a bike shop. I worked at like shout out to Eddie's Bike Shop in Stowe, Ohio. I worked there for like a month, and then Dick's Sporting Goods for a couple of years. After Dick's Sporting Goods, I worked for I did landscaping for a private company, or for a landowner. He had like 300 acres right outside the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and I would go there. My sister's best friend's dad was the land manager there, and he hired me to landscape. And I did that for a summer. That was my first experience landscaping. Then I got hired on as a creel clerk for Ohio Division of Natural Resources, Division of Wildlife in Akron, the Portage Lakes area. What my job was, since I told them, was like, I like to fish. I know how to drive a boat. I know how to drive a trailer on a truck. Hire me. And they were like, okay, we'll do that. And so they gave me a boat, and they said, go around and talk to people on the lake and see what fish they've caught, write down what they've caught. If they have anything in their live well, measure it. Okay. And then get back to us with all these surveys. And I was like, yes, I can do this. And me, me, I'm kind of a people person. I like to talk to humans. I don't have any problem talking to people I don't know. I'm a friendly guy. The whole summer, every weekend I was out running this ODNR boat and like just bothering people on the lake. It was so much fun.
Let me see the fish you caught.
Yeah, hey, did you catch anything? How's it going? Hey man, hey, how's it going? That was my deal. So I did that on weekends. And then during the week, I worked at a garden center, which I will not name, because it was a terrible experience. And I stood there and I watered plants for hours during the week. And then on the weekends I'd go and I'd play with fish. And that was like what I did for a summer. The next year was the first year. So that was 2016. The next year, 2017, I got my first EPA internship. I was my major in school was environmental science, aquatic sciences, and so I had taken a bunch of my classes. I had a state internship already, or a state job, and that helped me out with like having enough of a background. Plus, I like to fish. Plus, I know to drive a trailer and a truck, knowing all these things. I was good enough to like be picked as one of the 13 out of like 250 or something applicants for this position for OEPA intern for this fish section. And luckily, I was picked with another one of my friends who I grew up with named Jacob Jasonic, okay? And he went to Ohio State too, and he was on the bass fishing team with me there. And so we got picked, and then we made another buddy there named Murphy Cohen. Shout out to Murph. And we all kind of bonded and became really good buddies at this EPA internship, and it was a great time. And so did that for 3 years. I was there as a fish tech for 2017 and 2019. 2018, I was with the 401 wetland mitigation section, which was like a permitting section, something I needed for like a different experience level, which I really enjoyed. And very happy to like have been with them. We're going back to work again. I don't know how this keeps happening, dude.
It's fine. Well, it's because I brought up like the fact that you get to
Work and do what I
and deal with fish for a living, which is fishing is, like you said, it's your
part of my life.
Yeah.
It's very much so my bread and butter. Like if I couldn't fish, my life would suck. I mean, I would have more time to do other things, which is like always you're fighting like for outdoors. Like, oh my God, I could go climbing, or I could go fishing, or I could go shoot my bow, or I could go off-roading, or I could do any, like, I don't know. There's a lot of things you could do.
You're splitting your time between the things that you like to do. And if you want to get really good at something, then you're going to have to give up time doing some of the other things that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which sucks, which brings you back into the circle of the timeline of like what you do with your outdoor time. This also, my buddy posed me this question the other day. Mike, every weekend you're doing something in the outdoors instead of just going and like hanging out with friends. Like, why do you do it that way? And I was like, well, because I only have X number of weekends. Yeah. I only have a certain amount of time to be able to do these outdoor activities that I freaking cherish, you know? And so like, I do hang out with my friends. I just hang out with them like during the week, like after I'm done with work for like a couple hours at a time. There's no like, I'm like, okay, totally looking down at my screen over here and you, and the camera's right here, and I really should be like focusing there. Do you want me to look more at the camera? You can edit this out.
No, I've been looking. That I don't worry about that. I mean, I guarantee people are looking and being like, they're looking at each other.
Right.
That's what I think whenever I see it. I mean, I don't see people just staring at the camera. I think that's
this is definitely a creepy view. Sorry to all you people that just had to look at my face like that. I apologize. I'm out of I piled up some jerky right here, and I'm out of my jerky pile. All right. Back to the shit.
Yeah. All right. Back to fish. So with fishing, when you really
it really kicks into gear. The time of year that fishing is like the number one priority is like the end of March. The end of March for bass fishing specifically is when I will like, and this was horrible during school because there was like finals and midterms and crap that was like right in the middle of March that I was just like, I can study later. Sorry, mom and dad. I'm gonna go over to this pond. I'm gonna go hit the river. I'm gonna go do anything like that. But just like the time of year that it takes off. Because right now, for people that don't know, there's this thing called competitive bass fishing where people go out and they compete in tournaments, and you try to bring in there's a couple different formats, but you try to bring in your 5 biggest bass, and you bring in those bass and you get paid for winning and having like the most weight. And so in college, my freshman year of college, one of the guys that was I didn't go to OSU main campus my freshman year. I went to the branch campus in Mansfield. And one of the guys there, his name's Ben Wiley. I'm just name dropping all my buddies. Ben Wiley, he was like, hey man, you want to run down to Columbus to try out for the bass team? I was like, the what? He was like, there's a bass team. I know you like to bass fish. We've gone bass fishing. Like, you want to go try out? And I was like, I mean, yeah, sure. I guess I got nothing better to do. It's friggin' Friday night. I'm not doing anything. So we ran down there that next morning, Saturday, and I owned like 3 rods at the time. We'll get into this later because so much money. Showed up for the tryout, little bank tryout. We just walking around this big pond called Antrim Park Lake, which is, if you've been living in Columbus, do you know of Antrim? It's just there's a good like running trail.
Yeah,
it's a nice big lake. State record sawguy was caught out of this lake in Columbus. Probably put in there by some yahoot because I don't think that they were stocked in there. Maybe a long time ago they were, but this one was caught there. Anyway, we went fishing there and did decent enough to be like, hey, you want to come back for another tryout? I'm like, yeah, sure. So, because I caught a couple fish. Next tryout was a boat tryout that we did like on Hoover Reservoir. And I remember that I caught like 4 or 5 and nobody else caught anymore, or nobody else caught more than me. So I won that tryout. So I was like, hey, you're on the team. And I was like, hey, cool, nice. I didn't know that this was a thing until like this month. Yeah. So that got me into college fishing. And college fishing cost me a lot of money, but I loved every part of it because I got to travel around to different tournaments all over the country. I fished in New York, Virginia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio here, and like learn a bunch of things and meet a bunch of new cool people. And I highly recommend anybody that's a fisherman that's getting into college, like look into like if your school has, if your university has a bass fishing team, and like go out and fish tournaments. Like it was a great time. I made a ton of friends, and I learned an absolute crap ton about catching bass. Okay, and I've also learned that smallmouth are far superior to largemouth bass in any way, every way, shape, or form. They're just better.
How so?
But
Just in fight or in
so they are
what
pound for pound
exactly?
the hardest fighting fish that swims in fresh water.
Gotcha.
For sure. They're also beautiful, and they live in places that are gorgeous. They also are just more fun to catch. I just think they're more fun to catch. Now, people can argue with me, like people from the South where they don't have good smallmouth fishing. They'll be like, "Oh, largemouth are superior. Spotted bass are superior." No, it's not. It's not true. You need to be a Northman and go fish for smallmouth in like the Great Lakes. I've fished the Great Lakes since I was a little kid. Like that's where I learned to catch smallmouth and everything, and it's just a great time. And it's hard to explain to like people that super aren't into fishing per se. I'm gonna crack another beer. But it's just join a fishing team for those that are out there. But anyway, so I spent the better part of 4.5 years fishing for Ohio State, and after that, I fished a couple tournaments. I actually ended up winning the state qualifier my senior year for college bass state qualifier. Won that tournament, which then guaranteed me a spot at the college national championship in 2018.
That's awesome. Yeah,
and that was the second time I went to a bass championship, and didn't do very well at the championship. Caught like one bass for both days that we were there for out in Oklahoma during the actual tournament. In practice, we caught fish.
Did great leading up. Did great.
Oh yeah,
no. Just had a terrible day.
Practice was awesome. We found a bunch of fish, but then everybody else found the same stuff that we'd found, and they just destroyed our stuff. Shout out to like a couple of our buddies that did really well at that tournament. Tanner Ward, Nolan Miner, Casey Lanier, those guys did really good. And they fished for Kent and West Virginia. It goes back to like all the friends I've made in the outdoors, right?
Yeah.
You make friends any which way, not even knowing you're going to. Like Tanner texted me. He was like, "Hey man, like I know you're from like up north in Ohio. Like I got a house in Oklahoma for the national championship. You want to live with us? Like I got a couple buddies staying there with me." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." So me and my partner Bubba, which is great. You got to have a friend named Bubba. If you don't have a friend named Bubba, you're doing life wrong. Okay, he's a good kid. But we stayed with him and made a bunch of friends at that tournament. It was just a great time. Let's see, getting to fishing, college fishing. What else is there to know? So as far as like the fishing seasons,
yeah,
summer or spring is the best time to fish for bass. So like you have March through end of May or March through June. Okay, very heavy on the bass fishing. I'm not thinking about anything else. I don't turkey hunt, so I don't have anything to worry about going out and hunting in the spring at all. But that's where my brain is locked. Besides work and other things, like it's stuck into this mindset of like the stages of what the fish are doing throughout the season, and then fishing tournaments with my buddies and like doing all these fun things. That's like where my head goes. After June, it sucks. Summer fishing is garbage in Ohio. That's why June. The end of June is when I start running around to different states and fishing. So I'll go to like New York. I'll go to Lake Chautauqua in New York State, which is like the far west end of New York. Spend some time there. This summer, we went up to me and my buddy Trent, another buddy of mine. God, name dropping all my friends. We went up to Lake St. Clair in Michigan, right by the Detroit area. And that was a bunch of fun. Went there for a weekend. And then I have a lake house in Wisconsin that we go to, northern Wisconsin, the Door County Peninsula, which is like, if you think about Wisconsin, if people are looking, okay, here it is. It goes off this way. And there's a little jut of land that goes east from like Green Bay over. This is the Door Peninsula. And so my lake house is like on that little peninsula up there. And there's phenomenal fishing there, like any time of the year after May, because there's still ice until like early May up there.
A little cold.
So a little chilly. Not preferable. But I do enjoy ice fishing. That's another thing. Is like ice fishing is another thing I could be doing when it's wintertime and cold and nothing else to do. I'll go and I'll sit in front of a hole that's like, I don't know, 8 inches in diameter, just sit there for hours and hours and hours and be content. Or I go skiing, or I go play hockey, or like all the other outdoor activities you can do during wintertime. Shit, go sledding. I don't know. I do everything. There's very few things that I don't preoccupy myself with outside when I have time.
Yeah. So with fishing, if someone hasn't really gotten into it and like, let's say they are getting into college and they want to try and get into like bass fishing or something like that, what would be some first like steps that you'd kind of guess?
First steps.
Yeah.
So there's another kid, gosh dang, that I got into fishing this summer. His name is Dane DiGeronimo. He is the younger brother of a really good buddy of mine from high school. And like, I remember when this kid was like half my size, I pick him up and I throw him in like a pool. Okay. Like he grew up, he actually like played football. He's now bigger and like weighs more than me now. Bastard. Anyway, so I got him into bass fishing this year. The best way to get into bass fishing is to go with somebody who has a little bit of experience. And so like I took him to the Cuyahoga River. We went to some ponds and like he immediately was like, this is so cool. And so he's now going and joining. He's a freshman at UC. He's now going and trying to join their club team, which is awesome, which is something that I really am proud of the fact that like I got somebody else into fishing and now that's going to like continue the legacy. That's all about it for me, is getting people into the outdoors.
Then that person will get someone else into it probably.
Exactly. He'll get his roommate into it. Like that's how it's for me. My fishing partner, the guy who I spend the most time fishing with, I named him before. His name is Trent Richards. Okay. And he never went bass fishing until our freshman year of college.
Yeah.
Because he lived like across from me and he's like, hey man, you like to hunt, right? I'm like, yeah, I like to hunt. He's like, oh, cool. Let's be friends. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So I went to Dick's Sporting Goods with him. We bought him his first fishing pole, took him to a pond. He caught some fish. He's like, all right, now I have to spend a lot of money doing this. I'm like, yes, you do. And now he owns like a nice bass boat, a bunch of rods. He fished for the Akron team. He transferred to Akron from Ohio State. He fished for the Akron team. He went to the national championship one year. He he's now like pretty decent at fishing. Don't tell him I said that, but he's pretty decent. Like the other day we were at Chautauqua and he freaking kicked my ass up there like fishing. But like it's just cool to see people like that you've introduced to it like become good and like know what they're doing. And like there's definitely times when you like can identify the fact that people that are just like you can like this goes for any outdoor activity. You can ID rookies, but you appreciate the fact that they're trying.
Yes.
And that and you try to give them some help, like archery, for example. I was at the Saddle Grove Metro Park. For anybody that doesn't know about the Columbus Metro Parks, at Saddle Grove Metro Park, there's a free archery range you can go to. They have free 3D targets down at the bottom. There's like a little ravine that they have. Like there's a bison, there's white-tailed deer, there's a turkey. They have a grizzly bear. They have a bunch of fun things you can go and shoot. And then they have like bag targets. And so this is a normal place for people that are like kind of new at archery to show up as a first day. And there's always a bunch of us that are like semi-experienced there. And we'll always offer help. We'll always give people like some advice on like how to fix their form or like whatever to do. And that I feel
that kind of digs into the entire outdoor community. I feel like you're probably leading towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. If you're a nice person, okay, not a jackass, not a dick, you're gonna like if people like are not really expressing the need to learn things from you, but if you see that they're like struggling, or if you see that like there's something that they could do better, like a safety thing or anything, you're gonna I feel like if you're a nice person, not to butt into people's business, but you'd be like, hey, I like you could do a little better like this, or you could do a little bit like that, like for at least something that we commonly do, climb, Shit, at Ohio State when I first got here, like I had like been climbing in a gym. I started climbing when I was 3 and like got like some experience from my dad and everything. But then fear of heights, didn't climb for a while. Got back into climbing end of high school, college hit, and I'm starting to learn all these things and buy all this new equipment, which is okay. Shout out to my dad because he like is very into trad and climbing. And so like we have a full trad rack that he was like, I'm gonna go buy all this trad gear. You want some? I'm like, yep, let's do it. So I had like for as far as like funding for climbing, he's been like super helpful.
Yeah.
I've bought like, all my own stuff.
Trad racks are one of the.
They're pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and ropes are like the only two things that are like
ropes
really pricey.
Ropes are still cheaper than trad gear. Trad gear.
Oh yeah.
Trad gear is the top, and then you got your rope, and then you got everything else after that, kind of. Realistically, getting into sport climbing is not that expensive. Getting into trad climbing,
expensive or more expensive. But like we calculated out, this is gonna hurt me. We calculated out it's like $2,000 worth of trad gear and like or maybe just like climbing equipment in general as like for the family. So like my sister, my dad, and myself. Okay.
That's
We
still
climb.
not 2,000's not too bad.
No. And that's like with a double rack and then like anchor building materials and like we each have a gree, which is $300 right there. We have, I don't know, and then like your harnesses and like just locking beaners and all the other things that go into it. I think it's like $2,500. Okay, set with like also we have like 2 brand new rope bags, but then you also you dabble into the backpacks and like all the other stuff that you get into because you're like, oh, you need like camping equipment as well because you're gonna be staying at the crag or wherever you're gonna go. And so like then you branch out, you add a couple $100 here, a couple $100 here, and you get like we're gonna get into like the price of equipment now. So then my dad was like, well, this doesn't even compare to how much you've spent on fishing. And I was like, you're right. It does not. In fishing rods alone, I was going to bring this up earlier. So I started out when I started like competitive bass fishing, I had like 3 rods. I very quickly learned that was not enough because I didn't have the right. I'll equate it to golf. Okay. You got your driver, your putter, your wedges, you got your iron, you have like woods. Okay. And each of those things has a specific purpose. Bass fishing, when you get into it, when you really get into it and you're going to fish tournaments and you're going to be competitive, okay, there are different rods for different purposes. And you can't do certain things to catch fish certain ways with certain purposes. Everything in like any sporting goods store that has like a fishing section will catch a fish, okay? Yeah. But the way that you set yourself apart is by being able to catch fish in each circumstance or each like allotted condition that you're shown like during a tournament around the water, like any day. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like fish will bite no matter what. You just have to make them bite by giving them what they want, matching the hatch, forage, whatever. So I have thousands of dollars, which I'm not bragging. I'm not spoiled. I work hard for my shit. I have thousands of dollars worth of fishing equipment, thousands. Okay. And that's all stuck like in this giant big ass Tupperware thing that I keep in the back of my truck. Don't break into my truck. And my dad was like, this doesn't even compare to what's in the back of your truck. I was like, you're right. But now I own like, I think 15 rods and each one of them retails at $100 just the rod. You have a reel on that's about $150 a pop, roughly. There's some that are more expensive, some that are less. And so you're looking at $250 per rod times 15. I graduated college, but I'm not super good at math. Anyway, it's a lot of money. Yeah. You know, in
math
just
was
rods.
Not my strong point.
Right. In just rods. I am a scientist, though. You'd think I'd be better at math.
Calc killed me.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, calc was. I had to take calc a couple times to be able to get an A in it, but I eventually got an A in calc. So it was not a fun go around for the beginning of it. Anyway,
I feel that 100%.
Yeah. That and chemistry. Chemistry wrecked me also. I got an A in organic chemistry the last time I took it, and it took me a couple times to take it. Like I failed it twice, and then I got an A. Like once I finally was like, maybe I should get a tutor and actually know what I'm doing. You know? Yeah. So it took me like I was good at school, kind of. Like I could have been good. I could have been better, but I had all these outdoor things to do, so I had no time for studying.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, it all plays into what you're doing now, though. I mean,
I luckily have a job where I get to use my fun things and things I learned for school. Yeah. Like it's crazy. It's kind of the dream. I'm not making a ton of money, but like it's still it's building blocks to get to where you want to be. You know? Exactly.
And then I feel I don't know. I was the same way in college. I didn't have the best GPA graduating, but I also had like ton of experiences and learned all these things in my networking and everything else. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the biggest thing, like even external skills and stuff that I learned outside of school is so much, so vast that, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't change.
I wouldn't do it over.
Yeah. Nope. I remember same thing as you. It was one climbing season. I think I went down to the red like 10 times, and by the last time I was failing a couple classes. I'm like, I should probably make sure I actually like pass this semester.
Right. No, I'm
And
that same way.
so, but it totally worth it. I mean, you only go through that period of life once where you can just be like, I'm just gonna kind of float around and go down to the red every weekend and hang out and
Live at Miguel's and eat pizza and drink ale-8s until I'm fat, and then go climb and burn it all off the next day.
exactly.
That's exactly what going to the red was, dude. The red, that was a good trip. Okay, so for everyone that doesn't know, me and Mitch are not like super great friends, but we met one time.
Yep.
Okay, on a trip down to the red together. It was you, me, Hannah, and Nick Motes, right?
Yeah, it was Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. And we went and climbed Rochambeau and did like a bunch of stuff. I think it was Roadside Crag we were at. And
we went down to Muir. We were in Muir Valley. We
Yep.
did Roadside. We hit a couple different places.
I think
Roadside
Land Before
was
Time
still,
Wall.
I think Roadside was still closed. I don't think we went to Roadside.
We didn't go to Roadside? I thought we did.
Did we?
No, we did not. That was
Roadside was still closed. Yeah, I was gonna say
Roadside
still what was still closed up until I think our senior year it opened.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago.
Because I finally climbed Rochambeau one of these past seasons, which awesome route. Rochambeau is so much fun. I got some pretty good pictures on my Facebook from there. But
I think I might have taken some of those photos.
It was
or was that a different trip?
That different trip. I was down there with one of the guys down there actually was a photographer and had his camera with him and got some pretty dope photos.
That's for anybody that hasn't climbed at that area of the Red River Gorge, that is a 4-star rated sport climb. I think it's 60 feet, 70 feet tall. It's not super tall, like but it's like super overhung, juggy.
Not as overhung as Twinkie.
No, it's not overhung as Twinkie. No, you're right. But it's overhung, juggy, and kind of really pumpy, muscly moves to get up to the roof.
Yeah.
And it's a really sweet top finish. So you don't top out, but like the finish is really sweet, very strong, and it was really sustained the entire route. And when you let go, you swing pretty far. You take a nice little whip if you blow off, but it was a great time.
Yeah, if you fall off anywhere from halfway to the top, you're taking a good 20, 30 foot, which is always a good time.
Oh, for sure. But it's let me see. I think it's a 12A.
Yeah, 12A. It's one of the easiest. It's one of those ones that's 12A. It might be. A lot of people claim it's an 11D just because. I mean, it is pretty straightforward. The holds are good.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah.
You know where to put your hands based on the amount of shock that's there.
Not just that. I mean, it's. I mean, in general, the holds are just really good. It's giant flakes. I mean, it's huge. It's really hard to mess up that route. The one place that I've not gotten, I really need to get to the dark side down there. The harder, some of those harder walls. Now that I'm finally up to climbing 12s and harder things.
Have you bumped into a 13 yet?
I was going to this next season and try my first 13A, and I was training very well. I was gaining levels, and then COVID hit, and then I decided I'm going to move out west just on kind of a whim, and I haven't really climbed since April or March. Whenever they closed down, like everything, I think it was March. So, but whenever they shut down everything for COVID was the last time I climbed, and I need to get back into the community out here, join a gym, and start going again, and then start hitting up. There's so many places to climb, but it's a different type of rock than the red out here. It's the granite versus sandstone. So I'm looking forward to it.
I've never climbed on granite, but okay. So we'll dive into climbing because I want to do this. I'm feeling it now. This season, I was living at home because COVID hit. I had a lease in Columbus, but my family was like, come on home. You're not working right now because you're waiting for your job to start. Because I accepted a position in March for Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District to go up there, and that was going to be my job. But then they were like, we're not going to bring any new people. Sorry. We'll want you to come in next year, COVID.
Yeah.
I didn't find that out until like August. I accepted the position in March. Was supposed to start in May and be essential as of May. And in August, they're like, we're going to bring you in February. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll find a filler position, whatever. But during the wait time, I was applying for other jobs and looking around, and nothing bad about Northeast. Nothing bad about them. They're great. I'm super excited to go back in February. It's going to be a great job. But I spent like when I wasn't fishing because like it was gorgeous out and like the rock, like I found, which I am so upset that I didn't take advantage of this when I was in high school. But there is Whips Ledges, which have you heard about Whips at all?
The Whips, I've heard of
it's
them.
in Northeast Ohio, Hinckley area. For anybody that doesn't know, it is about there's this little tiny gorge it's the Rocky River Gorge technically, and there are a couple of there's about I think 100 something routes that have been established. And most of them, it's pretty much all top rope because you can hike around to the top and everything. There's like one bolted route, and it is just to get up. There's this pillar. There's this island. Okay, big rock island.
Yeah.
It's a 5-3R sport route. There's 2 bolts, and it's 40 foot, and you basically have to solo it to get up to the top to place chains to be able to do the island. Okay.
Yeah.
There is a chain around a tree, and there are 4 bolts that are sunk into the top to like clip gear to set up an anchor. Okay. And I'm pretty sure there's like another set of bolts that you can set up like a slack line across this like chasm. If somebody wanted to do it, I think that'd be a really sweet slack line. I'm not very good at slacklining at all, so I don't do that. But it would be that'd be something cool for somebody to try there. And so me and actually Liz Nudek, you know Liz?
That name sounds really familiar.
She was in Mountaineers. She's a good friend of mine. But
that's probably why it sounds familiar.
She's hiking the PCT. Yeah, she's blonde, 5'10". Yeah, she's hiking the PCT right now. But before she went on the PCT, we linked up and climbed a crap ton at Whips, and they have like between like 25 to 40 foot walls, all pretty much top rope. But there's some pretty good trad there. Like I've spent a lot of time this summer doing trad on this like short stuff, like only really needing like 4 pieces of pop for each of these routes.
Yeah.
But it's like it's decent sandstone. It reminds me of the red a little bit. There's like a bunch of those like little pockety like finger nubs and decent flakes. Some of the rock is a little weak. So I blew off a couple holes this summer, which I'm sad about. But it was a good place because while all the gyms were closed, you know, it was a good place to go and just like get a good pump in and like climb and practice. And we spent a lot of time there and planned up a lot of trips to maybe going to like Seneca and the Red this fall.
Seneca would be cool. Yeah, I've not been to Seneca. I know New River. If you get it's too late now, but have you? You know, it's the I forget what they called it. The redneck hoopla.
That was the first experience I had with Mountaineers. First experience. I have a bunch of fun stories about that.
I know
slightly drunken experience.
Hoopla was fun. I went one year, and then after that, I went 2 times by myself to the New River Gorge and rented out a boat and did free solo or deepwater solo climbing there, which is it's one of the few places in America that has some really good deepwater solo routes.
Yeah,
and it's a great if you're able to do it. But I know it's technically illegal to cliff jump there. The site, it's weird because it doesn't say anything about deepwater soloing.
Oh, I just down climbed.
Yeah.
But no, that was Somerville Lake was really cool.
Yeah, Somerville Lake's beautiful. So.
Oh my God. Like get out of the woods, man. Like that's another like if you're going to use public places, please be respectful. Please use like common sense and don't destroy or degrade our public spaces. Those same group of kids came down and like graffitied my favorite freaking trad route. They wrote penis on the freaking bottom of the cliff because that's where we were hanging out when we yelled at them. And like, that's another thing that like just drives me up a wall is like people like degrading our natural spaces. Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely drives me insane.
You know that there's millions of people that, especially like the national parks, when you go up and there's like stuff carved into rocks or things like that. Trees are bad too, but I mean, it's not as
permanent.
Yeah.
Because a tree will eventually die and not be there, and then another tree will grow in its place.
The rock will technically erode.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like in geologic time scale, you know. Yeah.
but
it's a blip for a
it's
tree.
still, yeah. And I don't know. I'm sure that you saw the pictures. I was just up at, if you ever get out here and get a chance in the Rocky Mountain National Park, do the sky pond. You can bring your
Yeah.
pole. I saw people with their poles in there. You can bring your fishing pole in there and hunt and fish these lakes up in the Rocky Mountain National Park.
And there's trout probably.
It's up in the it's up in the Snowmelt Lake. It's all the mountain lakes. So and it's just a beautiful, beautiful environment.
Have you done Democrat and Bros and there's 4 peaks, the 414ers that are like all like super close to each other? Have you done those yet?
Where at? I don't know if I've done that. I've only climbed 114er so far.
Okay, you got to step those numbers up, Mr. Colorado. Come on, dude.
I've done a lot more. I've been working it up with my dog and working her into it, which she seems to be doing just fine. So, but
I would assume she's doing fine. German Shepherd like that.
German Shepherd. She's actually a German Shepherd Blue Heeler. So,
okay.
A ton of energy. But she loves being out there. I mean, she'll go till she dies for me already.
All right, let's see. So. It's actually south of Breckenridge.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I've not been that far in yet. I've been hitting a lot of stuff within
Buena Vista,
Buena Vista. I have stayed in Buena Vista and camped there, but I mean, there's so many lakes and streams. I mean, fly fishing's so big out here. So many people. Every river you go to, there's someone fly fishing in it. It feels like.
Okay, it's actually the name of the town. It's like Alma, Colorado.
Gotcha.
I think. Yeah, which is that. It's north of Buena Vista by a long way off. It's actually really close to Breckenridge. It's really not that far away from Breckenridge. Yep. There's Bros, Democrat. That was the first set of 14ers that I did. There was 4 of them in a row.
Yeah.
And we went up there and we got caught in a freaking snowstorm. And it was August. We got caught in a snowstorm on top of the mountain, like in this, like, so the way, okay, I don't know if anybody can see this. Bloop. But there are these peaks that are all together right here. Yeah. And then there's a lake that's right there at 11,000 feet. And then these are all at 14,000. So you have like 13,000 foot of gain from there to there. And we got caught in the saddle between the 2 of the peaks. And my sister was like, she started crying. My mom was like, we're going to lose the trail. We're crossing this snowfield. I slipped and like slid down a couple hundred yards. It was great. It was a great time. And that was my first experience going up to try to do some 14ers.
Yeah, mountains are unpredictable.
Yeah, I know. But thankfully, we'd been to like hiking out in Glacier National Park a couple times, or one time, and then like when I lived in Colorado, I'd gone to Rocky Mountain National Park and everything a couple times, but that was when I was a lot younger. And so really hiking wise, I'm pretty much, that's like of the outdoor activities that I say I'm good at, it's the one that I have the least experience with. So maybe I'm not good at it. I just enjoy it. Yeah. I don't know. But whenever we go places, like, since my dad is super into it, we're always like definitely overpacked and overprepared for any sort of circumstance. And the other thing is, like, I'm not a scout or anything. One of my nicknames in high school was Boy Scout, and I was not a scout. I have friends that are scouts, okay? And they don't get called Boy Scout. For some reason, I was given the nickname Boy Scout, but I don't know. But we're always way overprepared and way overpacked, and that's not great for when you're trying to be lightweight.
No, okay? Not at all.
No. So I don't know. We hiked in with like fleeces and rain gear and everything like ready to go in case it got like kind of cold. The weather forecast was fine for the day, but then all of a sudden, like off in the distance on the other side of the next valley, we saw this like one giant gray cloud. It was just like steadily making its way across the valley toward us. And then we got up like to that saddle and we're like, maybe we shouldn't go any higher. And my sister was like, I don't want to get stuck in the snow. And then it just started absolutely dumping snow on us, which was crazy. And it was beautiful, but crazy.
Yeah. So, type 2 fun.
Definitely type 2 fun. And also that was like the second day we'd been in Colorado, like for that trip. And that was the trip, like, it was after I graduated high school, before college. So it was during that summer between the two. And it's like oh, you graduated high school, here's your summer trip, you know? And so we went back and we climbed the garden, okay, again, which was the first time I climbed there since I was a kid, like little.
Garden of the
Garden of the
Gods.
Gods
Yeah.
in Colorado
I need to
Springs.
climb. I need to climb there. I've been to Garden of the Gods, but I need to get a permit
Dude.
and actually climb
Mm-hmm.
the
It's really cheap. It's
climbing
not
wall. Yeah.
expensive to climb there at all. I
I know.
mean,
I looked into
it's
it. I just need
mm-hmm.
to get down there and do it.
I was actually planning, like, so for mountaineers, for people that don't know, like, if you're into mountaineers, you can you can submit and plan a trip to go on,
Yeah.
like, and then get your trip paid for, as like the guy who planned it, or girl, doesn't matter. But that was like the one I was working on that forever, and it was gonna be like a combo, like a couple 14ers plus a
Climbing at
guard
the
of the gods
garden.
climbing, climbing the garden, which has everything from like 5'6", 5'7", 5'8" to like pretty advanced crack climbing and trad climbing that if you wanted to get into, but it's not like super super tall either. Like, you can do multi-pitch there, but it'd be like 3 pitches is like the highest you can go there. I think 3 or 4 pitches.
It's not much there. I know there's more pitches at if you climb at the flat irons up in Boulder.
Yeah.
Which is another place where I need to, because you look at them and they're just these giant kind of like triangles at the edge of Boulder, and you're just like, I want to climb that.
We have a framed picture in our house, in my parents' house, of kissing Camel's Rock at the garden, and like you can see how the one camel is like kind of degraded a little bit, like its hump is eroded away. And then when we went that year, like that picture was taken like in the 90s, and then when we went in 2014 when I graduated high school, it was like smaller than it was in the photo, and I was like, oh man, it's going downhill quick. But it's, so for people that don't know, the Garden of the Gods is a bunch of towering red rock sandstone pillars. They got pushed up when the Rockies became a thing, and they just basically stood still, vertical. And it's owned by the city of Colorado Springs. It's public climbing, like public access. You can get in there with a permit and climb. The only thing, you cannot use white chalk. You have to use like an eco ball.
Yeah.
Or use no chalk, but it's super grippy sandstone. Yeah. Do not go after it rains, because you will blow stuff out. Like, you'll flake that crap off so quick that go after it rains. But it's gorgeous climbing, and I highly recommend it for anybody that wants to get into it. That's where I learned how to climb, or not learn, but that's where I started climbing. So crazy. But you should. So you went there and just hiked around, or what?
Yeah, just hiked around. And that was my first day that I was living in Colorado. I was like, I'm going to go out and explore somewhere, and decided to go down to Garden of the Gods to start. And then after that, I checked out the Flatirons, and then slowly started getting more and more into bigger. Like I just kept ramping it up, essentially.
I like it.
Started small, and then just been going from there. So, and one of the biggest, it's a beautiful area. It's called Indian Peaks Wilderness is a beautiful area. But ended up trying to get to a mountain lake there, and it was early enough in the season that you were
way too much snow.
Yeah.
Post-holing on your way in.
Well, it just was not solid enough. You needed snowshoes still.
Yeah. You'd be post-holing if you didn't have shoes.
I had micro spikes on, but that was it. And it got me further in with the micro spikes, but it definitely it needed a little bit more time.
Talking about buying gear, dude, I saw a pair of snowshoes on sale at Sam's Club for like $25 the other day, and I almost bought them. I thought, I was like, oh man, but then we didn't have winter here. Like, Ohio,
well, that's a good thing to have for when you're elsewhere, and that's such a good price because you're in the Midwest, and they're just like, we need to get rid of these.
Exactly. I'm kicking myself for not buying them. But like, another thing that I saw that I almost bought, like, I was at a garage sale for one of the outdoor like hiking, climbing shops up here by me in like Northeast Ohio, is Appalachian Outfitters. Quick plug. They had like a garage sale, like a gear swap. And I went to their little tent that they had set up, and I found these pair of like mountaineering boots that were my size, that were like would have cost like probably $400 brand new, and they were being sold for like $80, and I was like, Dad, look at these freaking mountaineering boots. And he was like, when are you gonna go mountaineering? huh? And I was like, well, there's this Mount Washington trip for mountaineers that like happens every year. I think about going on that. He's like, well, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to go on that. I'm like, you're probably right. And so I didn't buy them. But like, I still regret it because that's like gear that you add to the
Yeah.
cave, you know, and then just
I
you have
talked
for use.
to Nate Williams, who's a current mountaineer. He's trying to follow in the footsteps of. I'm sure that you've heard the stories too. After he brought it up, I remembered hearing about it. There was mountaineers back in like what was it, the 70s or 80s that ended up climbing Denali while in the mountaineers, and he's trying to follow in the footsteps of them and kind of climbing the climbs that they climbed in preparation, and then he's going to try and climb Denali next year.
That's crazy.
And he kind of climbed Pico de or Ziba, I forget how to pronounce it, but the tallest mountain in Mexico, which is this 18,000 foot, I think it is, like peak down there. That's a volcano. So
Damn.
he's done some. He's on his way to doing it.
To getting there. Shout out to that dude. I think I'd probably top out around 16, 17 because I don't breathe well at high elevation. But
the thing about elevation is you have to acclimate. If you don't
exactly.
So it takes living at altitude and working your way up it, and mountaineering's not a fast sport by any.
No.
You have to be fast at some spots, but it's hard to go fast. I mean, when you're going fast is when you make mistakes, and that's when
get sloppy.
die. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you have to. You can go fast, but you can only go so fast with still being safe. So
that brings up another freaking activity that I do. I actually just got into this last year, 2 years ago. It was last summer or last winter. It doesn't matter. I got into scuba diving. Okay. And getting into scuba diving was partially, in fact, because I was trying to get a job in Florida at the time, working as a diver for like this oyster survey. And I was like, that'd be a cool job. So I went and like got my scuba cert through Columbus Scuba. Shout out again, another plug. All these companies are getting free promotions today.
Yeah.
When this is like a bumping podcast, they're gonna be like, "Oh my god, like, can you please mention us more?" Yeah. like later on. But
to get actual sponsors. I mean,
exactly. Brought to you by Simply Safe or whatever the crap that all the other ones are out there. Yeah. So I got my scuba certification, and that's one of the things where like going into it not knowing anything, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to like exert so much energy down there, like swimming, and I have to swim fast and all this stuff. And then like you get there and you take the class, they're like, we move slow. You don't want to burn energy. You literally just sit there, cross your hands across your chest or like by your belly button and just kick with your legs a little bit. Just like it's a dive. It's not swimming. You're diving. Totally different mindset. And that's the same thing. You go slow, you maintain yourself, and everything's fine. Everything works out. If you
mess up at all, I know that's especially in diving. That's when people, because if you start to panic and breathe hard, it doesn't the way that you're not getting enough oxygen at that point.
The worst thing that you can do in diving, as explained to me so far, is one, holding your breath at depth and then rising is the worst thing you can do because your lungs can explode.
Oh.
No, your lungs can just straight up explode. Because if you lose depth, if you go up, get shallower, and you're holding lung, because like compressed air works the same way. You take a balloon that's full, this big. I just hit the ceiling. The ceiling is a balloon that's this big at the surface, okay, and you go down a couple meters. You know, it's gonna shrink down to this big. So same concept. If it's this big at depth, then when you go back up, it's going to be this big again.
So if you
don't want to hold your breath in your lungs because they only have a maximum capacity of like a certain amount. And so if you have compressed air in your lungs at depth and then rise, your lungs can literally explode. And that's like the worst possible thing that can happen. The other thing that happens when you're breathing compressed air is it's regular air. It's not straight oxygen.
Yeah.
You can get certifications to dive with straight oxygen, but that's like different levels of things, and you have to understand what you're doing a little bit better. I have an open water certification. Means I can go down to 60 foot, which is fine. That's all I need to go to right now. Yeah. I'm going to get the advanced diver eventually. That gives you access to 120 foot of water and night diving, which is dope.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. But for right now, I'm good.
Yeah,
But
diving's
the
one of
bet,
those things that I never thought about getting into until now. I've talked to you and David Roth just got into it too in the past year, and I'm
right? No,
like,
me and Dave were talking about it.
yeah. So I'm like, I kind of want to get into it.
Uh-huh.
So it's something that I never even thought about, and it's one of those things that once you have it, when you're in like these exotic places on these beaches, you can just go
Go
do
get
it.
you go. You don't even have to bring your own gear. A lot of places
Yeah,
you just get the dive shop information. You have like your certification card. You show up. They give you a wetsuit. They give you a tank. They give you the octo, which is the little dangly bit that has like your respirator, your backup respirator, your gauge, and like your emergency hookup line or whatever. The not the emergency, your LPI, low pressure inflator. There's like a bunch of
yeah,
different stuff. You take a course to do all this. But anybody that wants to look into diving, it's just another fun activity, fun hobby to get into. But if you get into it, you can specialize and be like, I'm a diver. Like I'm a scuba diver. I dive everywhere. I travel. But that's the cool thing. Like you can travel around a ton of places and go explore a whole nother world that like isn't available to you on the surface.
yeah.
Okay. And that goes
I
into fish.
Yeah, I wonder if one of the coolest places that I've swam in is this lagoon down in the down in Jamaica, and it has biofluorescent
That's
algae.
cool.
It has biofluorescent algae in it, and you swim in it at night, and it lights up blue. You can literally see
Hmm.
the outline of like your hand, like the exact outline, and
When you smack the water or
no,
something or what?
underwater. So like you're moving
Mm,
your hand like this underwater, and it leaves the outline of your. So you push your hand through the water, and you have the
what?
outline of your hand behind it. So,
That's
and
super
so
cool.
you're swimming. Every move that you make, it all lights up. And I mean, there's different places in the world, different colors, but the one down there is blue. And night diving there with that would be, but it's not that. I don't know how deep it gets. Like
Hmm.
with it still being that way, I don't know if because
That
of the
might
way the
only be
lagoon,
the top
yeah,
X amount of feet of the water column because
it
okay,
gets
when you think about
excited by
algae,
the light, the sunlight hits it and
hmm,
gives it that energy for the night. And
right?
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I think it is the only first like couple feet.
Hmm. Well, that's because that's
Yeah.
where the algae is going to
Yes.
be able to get appropriate sunlight. Like
Doesn't
when you
take
talk about
long
like
for it. It doesn't take long
yeah,
for sunlight to go way down real fast.
hmm,
I've seen the graph, and it has like the layer of water and like what percentage of light's getting through and how quickly that drops
it
down.
dissipates.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's crazy. If you want to talk about algae, man, I can talk about like the Great Lakes and how like harmful algae blooms are like pretty nasty and like
Algae
nitrogen
blooms are,
input and
yeah.
everything. But I don't want to get into more science. I already talked way too much about work. I don't need to talk about work right
Yeah.
now. But no, it's a whole nother world when you go underwater and can breathe. It opens up a whole new thing of possibilities. And the thing is, like, so since I'm super interested in fish, you know, I was like, I can't wait to like be in their environment and just watch and see what happens. And because you're always learning, you're always cognitively picking up
Yeah.
information that you can use at a later time. And so, like, it was just a whole nother like area for me to explore and learn about. Like that's the greatest thing. Like, and anybody that says like, "Oh, I'm done with school. I hate learning." Like
Yeah.
they are not a very like into it person about like how you're supposed to live life, in my opinion. Sorry
Yeah.
if that's you out there, but I don't really care. Like if
I'm done
I
with
don't know,
the school learning type,
yeah.
like actual
Oh,
formal school.
I
Done
am for
with
now.
that.
I am for now. I might go back to school and become a science teacher, maybe eventually. I don't know, but but right now I'm very happily graduated from Ohio State and
would
having a
you
degree.
would you ever want to get into like spearfishing?
Mm,
I know that you don't need
probably
to be.
not. Probably not because I mean I'd probably go and do it once, but I don't think I'd like get into it. I don't think I'd
Yeah.
buy my own equipment and like want to have like that be like a thing I do. Unless I like somehow find myself living in Florida and it's like just another thing I can do. Cause like
Yeah.
if you live somewhere where your opportunity of doing recreational things are limited to what's there, you know,
Yeah.
being in the Midwest, you can do anything kind of
Yeah.
like you can travel within like 9 to 10 hours and be pretty much anywhere doing anything you want to do, any direction. Okay. If you're in Florida per se, or like the South, you're not really able to go, you can't really go
Yeah.
skiing in the wintertime.
You got
You
your.
can't really,
Yeah.
it's niche kind of, niche, whatever it is. And so you have your things you're going to do in Florida. They stay there. Spearfishing, if I lived in Florida, I'd probably get into spearfishing or at least some sort of other type. When you talk about saltwater, dude, it's a whole nother ball game. It's a whole nother different set of scenarios of things you can do for fun as far as recreation. Like there's so many, like with diving and saltwater fishing and like all the different species they have down there, it's crazy. But if I couldn't like deer hunt or ski or ice fish, I'd have to fill that time somehow. So I think spearfishing could probably take up some of that time. But then that's also talking about like
moving to Florida. Florida's too flat.
There's not much topography there, dude. There's none. There's really not. So as far as rock climbing, besides gyms, you're really stuck with nothing.
Same with Kansas and those types of states. I don't see myself ever. I'm probably going to be stuck in a mountain state for the rest of my life. Now that I moved out here, I'm like, I don't see myself moving back to cornfields. Like,
hey, I'm not dissing on Ohio yet. I'm still stuck here, so. I do love the state of Ohio. I like the rivers.
It's great. Yeah, no, Ohio's great. It does have a ton to do, which I feel like a lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of activities. And I know mountain biking slowly growing there and a bunch of other things, especially in like, what's the name of the park right near?
Alum Creek.
Alum Creek's one, yes. And then by Ohio University, the big one.
Wayne National.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ohio does have a lot. It's not a lot of the stuff that I was really into, though. I mean, climbing, skiing. I mean, the Red was 2 hours south of me down Cincinnati, which was
convenient,
amazing. Yeah, very convenient. But outside of that, I mean, now I live somewhere that has the whole range of everything, and I can do my stuff in seasons and kind of, flow with it. Yeah.
The hard thing for me is that if I want to live somewhere where I can do everything I want to do. And it's hard because I love the mountains too. I haven't spent enough time there since I've been like an adult.
Yeah.
Like I've spent a lot of time there when I was a little kid because I lived there. But then I don't think I could really appreciate what I had when I was there. Obviously, I got the age of like 3 or 4 whenever we left to come back to Ohio. But I grew up around a Great Lake. Like I live on the water. So like to go out west, it'd be kind of hard to not have that same kind of access to water or water resources the same way that I do now.
Well, it depends on where you're at. I mean, you have a couple areas with a lot like more lakes.
There's reservoirs. There's reservoirs. There are,
Yeah.
But if I go out west, I'd probably end up in Colorado again. Or Montana. Colorado or Montana would probably be the two.
Montana, I had in the back of my head that I was like, Denver has, at least for starting out, moving out there, more opportunities and things like that, and a little bit more centralized for the nation.
For the greater of the West and Western United States.
Yeah, it's a little bit more centralized. And now that I'm out here, I mean, at some point I might move again, but it's a good.
I've heard Bozeman is pretty sweet.
I need to get up there. Yeah.
That's a place. I've been to Glacier in Montana. That's like the only place I've been to in Montana. But when we were there, it was absolutely gorgeous. But that's like northern Montana. Yeah, Glacier National Park.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to is now that I'm out here actually getting to explore these national parks that are within. And being from the Midwest, a couple hour drive is like
Nothing.
8 hours?
But like
8 hours? Yeah,
I'd do that for a weekend, no problem. Like that's easy.
Oh yeah, no.
My lake house is 9.5 hours away.
I think it's 6 something out to. I went to New River Gorge a decent amount, and that was always a weekend trip. I remember I got a few friends to go out there with me once, and we went all the way out, and they're like, "We're driving this far just for a weekend, okay?" I'm like, just shut the fuck up and go enjoy it.
We're just gonna go, dude. Come on, send it. It's a send. You just gotta commit and go. Like my sends are normally.
And they ended up having a ton of fun. We were on the lake, the lake up there, and just had a great weekend. I'm like, see,
told you,
totally worth it,
suckers. Shut the fuck up. We're going. I love that mentality. That's the best way. Like, you pick a weekend, you just either. Like, I have nothing going on, let's just go or do it. Like, I think my best sends have been, like, hey, we're gonna go to Michigan this week.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Or hey, we're gonna go to New York for like
I have
the
a
day.
lot more. I have a lot more of those now that I'm out here next to the mountains, where I'm just like, there's been days where like, I'm not feeling like a hunt. Like I'm like, I really want to go do a 14er tomorrow. I really want to just wake up and do that. And then at a certain point, you're like, I just got to get up and do it. It's.
Are you like a morning person at all or no?
No, but you kind of have
Oh,
to
that
be. You kind
sucks.
of have to be for mountain stuff
If
because
you,
I woke up for my 14er at which it ended up being it super eerie because it was during the wildfires at like the peak of like the smoke, and you got up there and it just felt like you were in like Mordor from like
yeah,
Lord of the
yeah, yeah.
Rings, and everything's like hazy and dark, and you're just looking around. It's like Mars or something. It just felt like otherworldly because it wasn't clear. You couldn't see the next mountain range over, which normally when I
The
climbed
next
Square Top.
valley.
Yeah, one valley and then the next mountain's over. You couldn't see that far. That's how
Oh my
crazy it
God.
was. It was. I'd say it was cool just based on the fact that it was different than any of the other hikes because it was such a weird environment to be in with that, like, because it's a different color. It's hard to, it doesn't pick up on photos really, but it's this weird just,
haze.
yeah,
You know
it's
what's
hard to
crazy?
explain.
Earlier this week, so like Monday, woke up, got to work, and like the sun was like visible, but we had the same, not same, obviously, because I'm
A
several hundred
lot
miles away
less.
from you.
Yeah,
But
the
we
smoke's
had
hitting
smoke.
Ohio.
We
The
we
smoke's
had
hitting
smoke hitting
Ohio
all.
from the west.
It's hitting all
I
the way
think
to
it's
DC and New York.
I think it's California and Oregon. So yes, Colorado had some big fires, but they don't hold a candle to like California
No.
fire. The For Colorado, they were big fires, yes, but compared
California is
to
getting wrecked.
California and Oregon, or yeah, it's Oregon, right? Yeah, my dad's really hoping that it gets under control around Crater Lake because he's got a trip coming up out there.
Dang.
So he's like, hopefully it's like clear.
All my
But
buddies that were in so School of Environment and Natural Resources, SENR at Ohio State.
yeah,
A lot of my buddies that I made there, they went and joined like because they were like forestry,
yeah,
and a lot of them transitioned through forestry and got into like fire and firefighting, fire control.
that's
And
pretty cool.
so I think you know Andre, right?
Andre, last name.
Fesco, I think it's Fesco. I don't.
Was he in the
Man, if you
Mountaineers?
listen,
Was he
he
in the
was in the
Mountaineers?
Mountaineers. He worked at the OAC. Glasses,
Okay, I know who.
blonde kid,
Yes,
kind of tall.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
he's out fighting fires somewhere out west right now, and like I keep seeing on his like Instagram or Facebook feed,
Yeah.
and like shout out to him. I just watched not this year.
I
I just
really want
watched.
to get a wildlands firefighter on this podcast. I
You
see
need
how
to,
they got into it and what led to their path to getting
dude.
into
Get
the
him on
wildland.
here, man. I'll
Yeah,
text him. I'll send him
yeah,
a DM and be like, hey,
yeah,
man,
for
Mitch
sure.
wants to talk to you, and I
Yeah,
think
no, that would
that
be
work out.
because wildland firefighters. I also want to get on ski patrol and start getting people on like from certain areas and like, okay, what led to you getting into this outdoor
Yeah.
industry and this part of it, and so that's kind of like
The
the next. I don't know a ton of people that are in like the actual industry of those things, so that's why I'm
I'm
starting
gonna
off with
send you.
this, and I'll be able
I'm gonna
to.
send you his Instagram so you can
Yeah,
DM him. All right.
sounds good.
So that'll work out. All right.
Yeah,
Shout out to Andrew, or he'll be fine. He'll be
yeah.
fine with it. The movie that I watched that like made me really realize like how crazy, because I'd seen news coverage and everything, but like
Yeah.
if anyone needs to see a movie about like what they're doing, the firefighters out there out west right now, I think it's like We Are the Brave or something like that. It's about like the hot shots that burnt. There was like a team of firefighting hot shots that like got
Died.
stuck on
They
it.
died in Colorado. It was
Yeah,
it was out. I forget the name of the peak, but they went out thinking that was going to be a small, quick little thing, and it ended up the weather switched like that, and with the
wind
wind,
switched
and
directions and they just
they
got
just got
toasted. And one guy survived. and because he went and did something else, or it was somewhere else when like it got turned around. And I didn't know that was the end of the story. Like I was watching it with my family, and then like my dad was like, "It's such a good movie, you need to see it." And so like we watched it, and then like this happened, and it just blew my mind. I was like, "Wait, they didn't make it? Shit!" Like, and it was like super sad, but like so like such a good story. And I was like, "Oh my god!" And that's happening right now. Like all the people that are out on the ground right now fighting the fire. So like it's crazy.
The
Like
thing is, that happened at a time right before there was a lot of technology being developed, and luckily there is a lot of things that have come out since that fire specifically. Like the radios have gotten better. There was no there was the communication was a little bit harder back then, and plus the tools that they have now, and just our ability and like how we can and see it with like our videos, like with drones and things like that, and really having a better
understanding.
Everything. So luckily the guys out there fighting, they have a lot more tools at their disposal to kind of use. So, but
gosh, that's such a tangent. Wow. But like seriously, the fire out there is crazy.
Yeah,
and I think being a Midwesterner,
said that it's supposed to be. I mean, a lot of it's going to be hitting Europe. They're saying
the smoke.
Yes.
Oh my God! Wow, it got up in like the stratosphere and just kept going.
Yep.
Jeez, I didn't even know that was possible to get all that way across.
That on the horizon in like Europe, they might be able to see like the slight orangeness might be coming from the fires,
from the haze, from the fires. In California.
Which is crazy.
Jeez. But let's see. What else, hunting wise or fishing wise or outdoor wise, besides I'm pretty much caught up on like how I got into fishing and like where I'm at fishing currently, with like the amount of time I spend thinking about it and gear and everything. But you can talk about like, I don't know. You have any other questions?
I guess with I know that I've talked about this a little bit with a couple other people, but with climbing, everyone has their kind of like 2 cents on how to get into it, things like that. And I know that I've already kind of mentioned it like with a couple of the other people, like I said, but what's your kind of take on it? Because climbing is one of those ones that I think is a little bit easier to get into.
As far as like outdoor recreation, like what kind of things you can get into? Yeah. And we can even do this for a couple of the activities that I do. But for climbing, I really think the best way to get into it would be to like just go to a gym. I mean,
start making friends.
Just talk to humans. Like literally just talk to people, and like talk to the people that work there, talk to the people that are climbing, be like, "Hey man, like can I get a catch?" You know, like, or that's the thing like I did all the time at Ohio State was like I went to the gym by myself without a climbing partner because I didn't really have, like when I first started going, like a ton of people that I knew to climb with.
That's
like
how
I remember going and I was like, I don't know anyone here. I'm just gonna go talk to those people over there. Or like, I'm going to go talk to that guy. I'm going to go talk to that girl. And like, maybe they'll give me a catch and see how it goes. And I was just like, hi, how's it going? I'm Mike. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
What's the beta for this deal? Or like, hey, like, can you like give me a catch? And then like, you'd start talking. And I made like a bunch of really good friends that way. People that I still like hang out and Snapchat with today.
Oh yeah. No, it's crazy. I mean, the outdoor community, speaking on that too, is, I mean, I feel like more so than some other communities, is so open to teaching and bringing new people in, and just, I mean, there's always the jackass, I mean, of the group, but I feel like there's less of them in the outdoor community. The outdoor community as a whole, I feel like, is very open to helping people get into whatever it is that they're into. And I mean, I've brought plenty. I think I've gotten 5 people for their first time outside down to the Red using my gear. I'm like, yeah, come down with me. I got the gear, get you out there. And that's like the whole, and I mean, you doing that for them then leads to them, once they have their gear, they'll use their gear to get someone else into it. And it's just this awesome community of people that.
Yeah. And as far as like buying gear and like what you need to start, literally the only thing you need to start for rock climbing, okay, are shoes, harness, and like you don't even really need an ATC a lot of the time. Like you can borrow one at the
I would argue
shop.
chalk. is so cheap, and the chalk bag costs like $5. So
Yeah, and
add
like
that
you
in
get your
there.
own personal chalk bag. Like those are two things. Okay, yeah, chalk. You don't need chalk, but like if you
It
want to use,
helps.
it helps.
It
Dude.
helps.
When I first like really got back into climbing, the chalk more so than like actually helping me, it was a mental thing. Like, okay, I got to a spot where I can chalk up. This is good. I'm resting right now. I'm chalking, and it was just straight mental. That's another
Yeah.
thing that people don't realize about climbing is how much of a mental game it is. I'm sure you've talked about this on your
Yes.
podcast, but like the ability to overcome the fact that you have to get up something and your body's like, this is hard, but you're like, no, I got this. Like, I can do this. You just shut up,
Yeah.
muscles. Hey, fingers, you got this. Hold on to that crimp.
It still
Okay.
is different
Lock the shit
than
off.
what me and who was it? David Roth. We were talking about kind of like the difference in the feel of, so from climbing to something like skiing, downhill skiing or mountain biking,
Mm-hmm.
and the feel like when you're climbing, you kind of, it's you in the wall, and you get this like weird, you kind of, everything else gets tuned out, where with like
Mm-hmm.
skiing and climbing, you're going fast, everything's happening super fast, and you're like
You
super
mean
hyper.
biking, not
Yeah.
climbing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, biking and skiing. Yeah.
Right.
Not
Mm-hmm.
climbing. And you're just kind of hyper focused, and you realize everything as it's like zooming past you, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
different mental game
Mm-hmm.
when you're skiing versus when you're climbing. You want to be calm, you want to be as
Mm-hmm.
relaxed on the wall as possible, because as soon as you get like tensed up and you're draining that energy, which your forearms, they aren't really I mean, even the best, I mean, they
They're
can only last so
strong, but
long,
they're not always that great. You got
yeah,
to get a good foot. You got to climb with your legs, man.
keep moving
Yeah.
too. You can't freeze up. And
Yeah.
if
If you
you're
get stuck,
nervous,
you're
you
gonna
also
die.
over grip then, and
Mm-hmm.
over gripping saps your energy super fast.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, if you do get scared, fear is one of those things that just, because
Yeah.
I remember the first
Got.
time that I knew that I was gonna take like a big whipper. It went from me like having like energy. All of a sudden, I realized how far past the last bolt I was, and I'm like,
You're like, ah,
shit.
shit.
If I fall right now, that's far. And next thing I know, I'm like over gripping, and all my energy went gone. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
there goes all my energy, and I'm gonna fall for sure now. Like, so
How much trad have you done?
I've not done a lot of trad. I think I've done like a few things down at the red at
Mm-hmm.
what's the name of that easy?
There's a lot of trad at the red.
There is, and I haven't done a lot. That's why
The
it was
I'm still getting into it. But what
yeah.
I have discovered is that like for sport climbing, once you start like doing trad and getting more into it and like actually like placing your pieces and everything, your head game for sport gets ridiculous. You're like, this
I
is fine.
I
This is
mean,
easy. This is
after
safe.
you after you've taken a few falls, though, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my mental game with lead, it took a while to get up, but
Mm-hmm.
now I'm at the point where it's like you're climbing, you just climb past the bolt like it's nothing. You trust your gear,
Exactly.
you trust
Yeah.
your belayer. Once
Mm-hmm.
once you've done it enough and you can fully trust your gear, it
Mm-hmm.
sets it. You kind of are able to push into a whole nother realm, and
Right.
that's what held me back for a while from doing harder climbs, because
Because you had a hard time with
you
the
just have to
trust.
remember that it's all safe. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
safe, well, relatively.
Safe. Safe. Quotes.
As with all things in the outdoors, it's
Exactly.
safe.
The no, but for trad, because you're placing your
Yeah,
own pieces instead of trusting like a bolt that's like for sure, you know? I mean, not for sure, but like enough so. But
yeah,
like if you're placing like a cam that's like, it's kind of shit. No, this is bomber. You put a nut down that's like completely solid. You're like, sweet, I got this. And the thing is like you have to take so much more time and so much more energy to place pieces and use all your gear. So as soon as like you don't have to do that again when you're doing sport, at least for when I went back to sport after, because I
yeah,
just did a ton of trad this summer.
yeah. That's
Um,
awesome though.
like the like clipping a piece in, or just clipping a draw is just like no time at all, no
Yeah,
thought process or whatever going into it. You're just like, okay, cool, next one, let's go, keep going, and you're moving, you're moving instead of like sitting there holding, testing a piece. This one fits, okay, lock, clip the rope, extend the piece, like everything, or like it's just so much more time goes into a shorter climb for trad than a sport climb. And your head game is just like two different levels of how much protection you need versus, okay, just clip it, you know? Like
trad's one of those things I definitely need to get into, and I definitely need to find someone that's willing to do it with me and kind of get into it. So I'm going to be looking for that out here so I can actually start climbing.
You're going to get a rack?
Boulder
you're going to get a double rack?
At some point. I will at some point have a double rack. I mean, my room is already half gear. I have nowhere to put my skis.
So, I see that. I noticed the skis in the background there.
No, my closet's not tall enough, so I figured mine's will just they fit. Yeah, you can't tell, but the wall. Oh, you can tell, but just
there's a line. There's a little
it comes
gap.
out a little bit. It comes out a little bit, so it fits right there, perfect. So
that's sweet.
But I need new boots, and that's the biggest thing about a lot of these sports is kind of the cost and kind of getting into them. I feel like for a lot of people, at least what I think, getting into a sport that is going to be expensive, you kind of just have to start saving up, and if you really want to do it, you'll find a way. So, and that's the way a lot of outdoors people are, is like, even if we don't have like a ton of money, we find a way to do the things that we love.
Right. But the worst part, I think, is once you get hooked. This is not the worst part, but this is like shit. I love this. I'm in this now, and now I have to spend my money on this. And that was like the thing is like growing up, like I was never into
you definitely
going
hit that
out.
Point.
Yeah,
never even thought about it, because all those sports, you hit that point at one point where you cross the threshold that there's no going back. You're
like, I'm in it now. Goddamn. And that was very early on. I think that was like very early on for fishing. Rock climbing, I didn't really have to spend a ton to get into rock climbing because it was just like a new harness for me, and then like shoes when I blew out shoes, and then like all the trad gear was like like me and my dad put that together, and then like my rope was a Christmas present. So like that was really not that expensive. The most expensive part about climbing for me was gas to get down to the red or get down to like where I wanted to climb, and then camping's cheap once you got like a tent and a backpack.
I dropped about, when I finally decided to invest in a rope and hardware, so my quick draws and all of that, I think I dropped about $400-$500,
and that's
my initial entry into it. And that's like,
it's about $100 for a 6-pack of draws if you want to get a good 6-pack of draws.
Yes.
And so if you want 12, you're going to drop $200.
Yep, that's
two
packs. And then
2 packs, rope, which is 300 roughly. And like, what are you rocking right now?
I'd have to go look. I forget.
I've
had them for a while. I've had them for a while because I hard gear is great. I mean, at a certain point you need to replace the soft parts of it, but I mean, hardware lasts a while. So
microfractures are a joke. That's what my one friend who's like an engineer said. Like they did like a bunch of tests on a bunch of hard gear. Like it can withstand whatever you do. You can drop it off a cliff; it's still fine
as long as you don't side load it.
As long as you don't side load the thing and have your. If you side load it and put your rope or where the fall is going to be on like the opening of a carabiner, you're going to be fine. You're fine. Then you're fucked. But
if you're on the strong points,
you're good. No problem. It's gonna withstand 21 or 20 to 22 kilonewtons regardless of what happens to it.
Yeah.
But soft gear, we just actually replaced our all of the webbing on all of our older cams this year, which we did it through Black Diamond because that's what we rock. Is we have a bunch of Black Diamond cams.
Yeah, gotcha.
And we bought we then bought another set of cams to make it a double. So we now have a full double rack of everything up to a 4.
Pretty much
I can climb anywhere.
Climb everything except for giant off width.
Yeah, exactly. We do not have I have everything but a 5 and a 6. I have and like some of the micros. We don't have like a 0.1. I have a 0.3.
Some of those micros get dirty small, and I'm like,
Like,
It's
I just use a
insane.
nut. I would just use a nut, honestly, because like you can just wedge a nut somewhere in a thing that small. Hello, cat. I have a cat right here next to me. Do you want to be in the podcast? Come here. We saw your dog. Here's the cat.
Yeah.
This is Gomez, everybody. My roommate's cat. Anyway, I have a 0.3, 0.4, and then I have doubles of 0.5 to 3, and then I have a 3.5, which they don't make anymore, which I love. It's a super great piece. Jordan Redding said he was going to buy it. He wanted to buy it off me. He's like, "You going to sell that?" I'm like, "Hell no."
I know Jordan's way into trad.
He's super into trad.
Oh
He's the trad dad.
I just remember being at Ohio State and him talking about taking falls on like the smallest shit that's like an overhanging crack, and he's like, yeah, you don't know fear until you take a fall and you know that you're falling on a piece of gear that
is
you're
garbage.
not sure about.
Yeah, when you're falling on crap gear and you're gonna unzip the entire wall, not good. But no, I've heard his stories too. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
But this so a 3.5, and then my biggest piece I have is a big 4. But it's like that's the rack in it, and then we also have a double set of nuts and like all the extension pieces, like slings and everything you need. And it's a good rack. It's heavy. It's not super light. You know, the older gear.
Obviously, you guys already had the one, but if somebody were to buy full rack, I mean, I know that a lot of people.
What do I recommend?
Yeah.
For like if you're getting into trad, you want a set of stoppers, okay, which is just like nuts, okay, and that comes in like stuff that's the size of, I don't know there's like a numbering system to it, but you want something that like is definitely like half the width of your pinky, okay, all the way up to like bigger than your thumb, okay, for nuts, all right, and then that'll be like 6 or 8 different ones, or maybe even 10.
And
okay,
those are cheaper than cams.
Okay, and then you can get hexes, which are kind of like an auto camming device. Like if you fall on a hex, it'll like lock into a certain position, but it's more like a nut because it's a set width and diameter, or it's a set width. But it's auto camming because the way that the wire goes in through the thing, it like when you fall on it, it's pulling down at like a weird angle and it locks into place. Cams, for those that don't know, I'm sure that they will know by the time they listen to this podcast, it's a plunger. If I had some, I'd freaking get them, but I don't have any with me.
That's fine.
But it's basically like an auto device where you can crunch it together, and then the lobes of the cam, which is what you put into the crack of the wall, condense, and then when you put it in, you release the plunger, and then they expand to fit into the wall, and they come in a bunch of different sizes. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like a 0.3 to a 4. Those are all different sizes of camming equipment, and there's a bunch of different brands. There's Black Diamond, there's Petzl, there's all these other different like brands. I use Black Diamond ones just because they're affordable, and I got them from REI and whatever. I can use my membership to get the 20% dividend at the end of the year, so I decided to do the REI deal.
Gets you 20% off essentially.
Exactly, 20% off of everything in the store, always. Yep. Which I highly recommend. Another company, yay, plugs for free.
No, their program I thought it was 5%.
I don't know. I mean, but you get.
It's not 20.
Is it 20? Is it 20?
Thought it was
is
5.
it not 20%? It's 5. Whatever. 5. Sorry, REI. I got your numbers wrong.
Because I know it's.
You get money back.
A little at the end. You can buy something for fun at the end of the year. Always.
Yeah. And last year, oh my God, this next year is going to be huge. How big the dividend is, because we bought like the rack and we bought like a bunch of climbing shoes. It's going to be nuts how much money I have to spend at REI next year. But that doesn't matter right now. So going back into it, for a trad rack, you're going to spend like $60 to $80 per cam, and I would recommend getting like a 0.5 to like a 3, and that'll cover you like a 0.5, a 1, a 2, a 3, like 4 cams, and that would cover you for like most of the stuff. And if you wanted to go smaller, go like a 0.3, a 0.5, a 1, a 2, or no, 0.3, 0.5, 0.75, 1, 2, 3. Get 5 or 6 cams, okay? And then a set of nuts. And that'll cover you for pretty much any sort of beginner trad that you want to do. Okay. And then you want to get like single length slings, get like 4, and then two or three double length slings as your extension pieces. And you're going to be able to climb, depending on how spaced out you want to place your gear, like you can climb anything from like 20 foot to like 50 or 60 foot with that amount of gear, depending on like the size of rack. And a lot of times in a lot of the guidebooks that you're going to get into, they'll say at the bottom of like a trad rack or a trad route, they'll say like a single rack or like a double rack required, or like you need this piece for sure on this one crux move. Like they'll say that at most per se guidebooks for climbing. Like at least the Red River Gorge has like information, or like they have information in their guidebooks. So
and then you've already talked about getting into fishing, and then I guess kind of the last thing because I feel like hunting is one of those things that unless your family does it,
it's hard to get into.
Yeah.
Right. As far as getting into hunting, I think the easiest way to do it would be to just, first off, hunting, for people that don't know, you have to take a hunter safety course, okay, which goes through a bunch of different safety aspects because you're going out there with a firearm or a bow or some implement that is used to take game, and there's a lot of safety involved in that. So it's not a bunch of rednecks going out drinking beer and shooting things with guns that don't know anything about hunting. It's actually people that go hunting have to take certifications. They have a certification to be out there. But I say like the best way to get into hunting and to go out and experience it is to be asked before you actually like buy a hunting license. In Ohio, at least, where I'm from and where Mitch is from, we have a apprenticeship license, and you can get that and not have to take the course, but go out with somebody that knows how to hunt, and then you sit with them, either whether that's like deer hunting or duck hunting or dove hunting. Honestly, the easiest and most inexpensive way to go hunting would be to go dove hunting. And all you need is like a shotgun, and you go out and sit in a field. You can wear a t-shirt and shorts. It does not matter. And you go out and you just sit there and wait for the doves to fly in. If you have like a little decoy or like a little spinning wing deal, and they taste pretty good. So it's the reason to hunt is not about like going out and just killing things. The reason to go out to do it is for food acquisition, and like a lot of times people don't really get that. I think that a lot of people that aren't in this kind of community have like maybe negative thoughts about like, oh, it's just a bunch of drunk people going out and shooting things. Like that's not really what it's about. Like especially out in Colorado, there's a huge hunting community for people around like elk and public land use, and they go out and they hunt and they get food for the family and everything. It's a huge community. And so I really implore people to look into it as far as like a food acquisition and just like another way to recreate on like public land out west, because there's so much public land out there to use.
Oh yeah.
And as far as like out east, or Midwest or Eastern states, like finding a friend that goes hunting and like asking to learn about it, or asking to like, hey, can you take me or something. So like I took a friend of mine hunting for the first time last year, and she got like super into it, and she decided to take her dad hunting this season, and it's just and she's going to go out west and hunt with her brother and like all this stuff.
That's
so
awesome.
it's really cool to get into it. And if you like really do like it, then you can go all out. But if it's something you try and it's not for you, then it's no harm, no foul.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of backpack hunting.
Oh yeah.
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 Is that something that you've ever wanted to try or have done?
Yes, I want to try to go out west and do that, either in Colorado or Idaho. I have an elk hunt planned for Idaho next year, but it's not going to be like a backpacking hunt. A Colorado elk hunt that I eventually want to do, or a Colorado mule deer hunt, is going to be one of those things where you pack everything in on your back and you hike into and you hike in the mountains, and then you pack it out on your back. Like if you're successful, if you get a kill. But that's like the ultimate out west hunting experience that I eventually want to have notched. I want to do that so bad.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of online media.
Yeah. And I just know that's one of those things that, I mean, the backpack hunters that I've heard talk about it, it can be a brutal thing because you're out there kind of in
Definitely
your
type 2 fun. Definitely type 2 because you're not going to enjoy it while you're packing 100 pounds of meat on your back. Oh, God. And especially if you shoot something like, so for elk hunting, for those that don't know, elk weigh like 800 to 1,200 pounds. Okay. They are large animals. Your average white-tailed deer weighs like $150. There's no way that like you're packing or you're dragging like a whole elk, okay, out of the woods. You have to like cut it up, debone it, and pack the meat into bags and put that in a backpack and then hike it off a mountain. Whether that's like a mile, 300 yards from your truck, or 7 or 8 miles. So you have to like haul ass, and you have to get that meat out before it spoils. You have to take care of that meat, get it on ice as quickly as you possibly can. And so that comes into like being in like mountain hunting shape. Like a lot of people, there's a guy who some people don't like, but I kind of look up to him a little bit. His name is Cameron Haynes, and he's like an ultra marathon runner. All he does is lift a lot, shoot his bow a lot, and run. That's all he does.
Is Cameron Haynes the one that's like one of the best like backpack? I think he might have been on Joe Rogan's podcast.
He was, yeah. He's the one who got Joe Rogan into hunting.
Okay, yeah. That's the guy
and Joe Rogan likes to hunt. Yeah. Cameron Haynes. But if you look into somebody to like listen to about like any sort of hunting podcast, look up Steven Ranella on the Meat Eater podcast. He's like really like, I listen to him a lot and I learn a lot from him. But he lives out in like Seattle area and he has roots in Montana. But his show Meat Eater is on Netflix. Very good show. He's all about getting people into the outdoors and getting people hunting. It's like a huge like thing that they do, and they're all for public land access and public land conservation, clean water, clean air, clean fishing, like everything. And so like I vibe heavily with that, and so that plus I don't know, everything else that he stands for is really cool. But the Joe Rogan podcast, Cam Haynes was on that. Yes,
that's the guy that I was thinking of that I've heard a couple other guys talk about it, like not as much, but he was the one that really dug into like he lives the lifestyle of a backpack hunter. That's like all he does. So,
and he's from Oregon originally, so he goes like blacktail deer hunting. That's another type of deer species I forgot to mention was like blacktails, which live like Pacific Northwest. But they're like a mule deer that speciated over there and is smaller than a regular mule deer. But anyway,
I guess, go ahead.
Nope, you go.
That's it?
No, what were you saying?
Just we're kind of getting near the end, obviously slowing down a little bit. I was going to see, do you have any dream like trips for fishing? And then obviously you just kind of touched on probably one of your dreams.
My dream hunt. No, and out west. So there's a couple different species. This is really quick. What the hunting one is. There's a couple different species that I'd like to eventually pursue. I'd like to shoot an elk somewhere. Doesn't have to be Colorado. It could be Idaho, Colorado, Montana, anywhere. But like somewhere where I can go and take an elk because I want the meat and I think it would be an amazing experience. I'd like to go after a mule deer, which you can get anywhere from like Nebraska, the Dakotas to out west, all the way to California. Like they're everywhere out there. So that's that. I want to go on 1, 2, and the third one would be like a pronghorn hunt. I think that'd be pretty cool.
I've heard of pronghorns.
Pronghorn antelope. They are quite tasty, so I've heard. And it's one of the easier out west hunts to get into if you're just trying to start out with an out west hunt, from what I've heard. I haven't done it yet, but those are the top 3. And then as far as like an all out fishing trip, so I've been a couple places. I've been to Alaska. I've been everywhere from Alaska to Florida fishing. So there's not really like a place that I want to go that I haven't been yet. I think going to like California and fishing like saltwater off of like out of like San Francisco would be pretty cool at some point.
You don't have any like overseas ones that like
around the world somewhere? Yeah. I think catching a GT in Australia would be pretty freaking cool. A GT, for those that don't know, is a giant trevally, and it's one of like the most badass, meanest fish in the sea that swims. But like I'm a more realistic of like what I'm probably gonna do next season. Okay. This year I hit okay, I was talking about smallmouth fishing earlier, and I was saying like
Yeah.
smallmouth are my favorite fish to catch like ever. I hit probably 3 out of the 4 best smallmouth fisheries in the country this year. Okay, this is a great year for me for smallmouth,
Yeah.
and so next year I want to hit all 4 again. I want to hit the 4 best of the best, and that is the St. Lawrence. Okay, top. Ooh, it's hard to say which one is the best, but the 4 go in not in any particular order.
Yeah.
The St. Lawrence Seaway, okay, which is over like Waddington, New York area, Thousand Islands, okay, is up there. 1.
Yeah.
Lake Erie in my backyard is probably is up there as well. Like world record smallmouth, I think, has been caught in Lake Erie. Lake St. Clair, where I went for a weekend send this year, also top 4. And then Sturgeon Bay in Wisconsin, which is where my lake house is. That's the other top one. And I hit St. Clair, Erie, and Sturgeon Bay this year, but I did not hit Thousand Islands. And so next year I have a Thousand Islands trip planned in June, and that's going to be I'm going to hit the top 4 smallmouth fisheries in 1 year. Get the slam. That's going to be my ultimate freshwater trip. I think saltwater trip, like if I could pick one that would be dope, that would eventually happen before I die, is going to be like an Australia saltwater trip. I think that'd be pretty cool.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Australia has some crazy, just in general. You could probably mix in a hunt down there too.
Actually, the hunting regulations in Australia are pretty weird.
They are.
They have
really
a pretty strict firearm regulations. Archery is getting pretty big in Australia because they have like very, very restrictive firearm regulations, especially for people that are non-residents.
Yeah. I knew the firearms was, but I know that bow hunting's big down there.
It's getting bigger. The other thing is like the only things you can hunt for are non-native species in Australia. So it would be like introduced buffalo, which is like the Cape buffalo.
Yeah.
And then like wild pigs.
There's also, I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't realize
there's also,
that.
Yeah, there's also a couple other non-natives that I think you're allowed to hunt for, like goat species, I think. But I think as far as like not in America hunting trip, I have no interest in hunting in Africa at all, really. But a lot of people are like, I'm going to go to Africa and shoot the big 5, which is like a jaguar, like not a rhino, a kudu, or there's like a bunch of like the dangerous big game of Africa that like people can hunt. I have no interest in doing any of that. I think those animals are way too cool and it's not. And the other thing is like in America, we have public land and wildlife that is unparalleled to anywhere else in the world because of like the conservation ethic that we grew up with like in our country. Okay. And so like we have more wild spaces and native wild places than anywhere else ever. Okay. Or in existence currently because of like how populated and how owned the rest of the world is.
Yeah.
Okay. Like there's really no such thing as public land in Europe or in Africa. It's all owned by like a country or a person. Gotcha. So there's no like, and you have to like pay to be places or you can't be places. That's the way that's the way it works out. Like we're very privileged in our country as far as like our access to recreation and public land. It's crazy. I don't know. Awesome. And so that's why I think that like traveling to hunt outside of our country, except for maybe like Canada or Mexico, would be like not the best use of my resources, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
of course,
dude, thanks for having me on. I know this has been like what, 2 hours?
It was awesome.
No, it's been like 2.5 hours of time zipping around with this talk. So thank you for having me on.
No, it was great. I love how diverse your background is in the outdoors and being able to touch on a bunch of different things, how you got into them, and just showing people that, I mean, a lot of the stuff you got into, you haven't been doing your whole life. You can always find a way to get into these different outdoor activities. There's pathways in. It's not as daunting as some people think it is. Right. And if people want to like ask more questions about crap, like you can always hit me up on my Instagram or stuff. If I don't know if you're plugging like other people's Instagrams or anything. Like your Instagram will be at the bottom. So so if anybody has any questions about any of the topics that we talked about, feel free to hit up Mike and he'll answered it the best visibilities, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, dude, thanks again, man, and hope you
Awesome.
have a good night. I know what time is it out there? It's mountain time, so you're at like
8:40. It's 8.
8:40.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
early.
it's about 10:42 here, and I got to get up for work tomorrow morning, so I'm gonna go to bed here soon.
Well,
I've had a couple of my beers. I'm
yep.
feeling great. Signing off,
Well,
man. It was great talking to you.
sounds good. And I will see everyone else on the next episode.